Okay. I'll
pull it up, link it to the fam.
Got my Dr. Fear, like a fanboy.
Oh, see, I like y'all's YouTube banner, man. You're revolutionizing the industry up here.
Oh yeah, dude. Everyone needs to see. Oh my God.
Okay.
On that note, this is what I'm drinking today.
Is that the Liberty?
This is the Liberty. I don't know if you guys are
that's
supplementing with anything tonight.
I have chicken rice and a Samuel Adams.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had Sam Adams, right?
Yeah, it was sitting in the fridge, and I was like, "Oh, the last beer. I'll sip it before the show."
There you go.
All right. Well, we are live. I want to say hello to everyone, and thank you for joining in. Today we've got the Vanilla Gorilla, Drew Peters. I really am so excited about tonight because I think outside of like all the people like Justin and Jacob support me so much, but Drew is one of my closest friends in the industry, so I'm really happy to have him on tonight, talk with these beautiful people. I do have to remind everyone tonight that you guys may be the ones saying the words, but tonight, if anyone's going to get sued, it's me. So, if you like me, please act accordingly. So yeah, thank you so much, Drew, for joining in. Let's have some fun.
Okay, we have got to stop with these.
Yeah, turn off the notifications.
I'm so sorry. They're just going off left and right.
I don't think I can hear Drew.
And where I think I know who might sue you.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
But I just have a sneaking suspicion I know who might sue you if we aren't careful. So
yes, yeah. Well, we are live, so thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to be talking with you guys today. Let's talk a little about where you came from, Drew. I actually met you when you were at ProSups, but you actually started on our side of the industry in the reviewing category. So I find that very fun. I'd love to bring that up and talk about your journey.
Okay. I mean, that's the funny thing is most people, they're like, how do you do what you do? Like, there's no like straight line. You don't go to college and say, you know what, I want to be a director of science. It doesn't exactly exist. It's kind of a collaboration of things where I kind of weaseled my way in just by doing a lot of different things, wearing many hats. So as Ben alluded to, I did get my start from a college dorm room in a little town called Wayne, Nebraska in 2008 on a site called supplementsrating.com, as god awful as that sounds. I basically became a part of the site, started contributing, so on and so forth. And I was one of the very few people of maybe like 5 active users on there. And this exploded. And eventually, long story short, so I came on board. The guy noticed I helped so much on the site. Like, bro, I should just hire this guy. I'm like, hey, that's a great idea. And in long story short, we changed the name to supplementreviews.com. We grew that platform to a pretty large size. Over time, it kind of catapulted the reviewing side of the industry. I got into it actually because I broke my wrist as a senior in high school. I was obsessed with just getting back to where I was. I was a lifter, an athlete. I'm like, fuck, man, this broken wrist sucks. So I want to get back faster. I started researching supplements, researching nutrition, look into all these things. I came across, this idea for the website, and then got together with a guy named Tom, of all things, his generic name ever. And we just kind of ran with it. So for all 2009 officially through 2015, before I stepped away, I was PD from supplementreviews.com, where a lot of people, don't even know about that site. But that's how I got to know a lot of people within the industry. I became familiar with a lot of companies, and at that same time, I kind of got involved in the formulation side, just from kind of my perspective. Like, if you were to review this product, what would you like about it? What don't you like about it? What do you see as faults? So that comes in a good part two. As a formulator, sometimes when I put something together, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pick this apart as somebody that's reviewing a product, what would I like about it? What wouldn't I like about it? What would I see, overall as a brand? Because I can take a step back, because it's easy to get lost sometimes when you're making something. It's like, oh, this is perfect. And you don't see what else is out there. You don't see what else is in the line as a whole picture. But if you have that understanding, you understand what the consumer's looking for, what the store people are looking for, and all those fronts. So I feel that's an advantage. But it kind of segued into the formulating and research R&D side from just being involved in reviewing. And that's a strength of mine. So I understand the consumer, but also after I stepped away there, in between going full-time in the industry, I ran 2 GNC stores in Omaha, as well as, of course, a Complete Nutrition. So I've worked on the storefront side as well. And that's the chicken being done, guys. So we're good there. That's a strength. So yeah, I've been on literally all 3 sides: reviewing consumer side, storefront side in terms of sales, and now where I live and breathe, and that's my forte, on the R&D side. So
That's awesome.
Cool. I didn't know any of that. So, because I think one thing about like the review type game that's cool is like just what you just said. Sometimes like if when you're in the brand, you're just hyper focused on what you're doing. You're hyper focused on the marketing stuff like that. But when you're like kind of reviewing, you get to see a lot of stuff. Like that's kind of like one helpful. I guess that would be right. Like you were alluding to, that would be helpful for you when you're talking about maybe formulating or new cool ideas. Like you have access to all this like huge like amount of supplements. So I'm sure that kind of like carried over for you.
Yeah. And to this day, I don't obviously review things. I think that might be, as they say, and essentially a little bit biased, but I can look at a formula and just kind of, hey, man, I like this. And I think I appreciate people's work. I think Ben knows, as you was all do. I'm a fan of a lot of other brands. I cheer for people doing cool shit in the industry. What I have a problem with, I'm sure we'll get into later, is other things. It's not a matter of people. I want to see people win because that makes our whole industry win. I want to see our industry do good. I want to see people like what we do. I want to see people get behind it. I hate seeing people get busted for doing stupid shit. I hate people get in trouble for not making label claim. I hate people making like the industry look bad. And it's interesting because a lot of times you see things on the news about industry as bad. It's like, I've never even heard of this fucking brand. Who is this? It's like some little rinky-dink vitamin company, and then the whole industry gets smeared with a paintbrush. So it is.
I was going to say, I think that's one thing that we talk a lot about, that you're already saying that it resonates with me is, we tend to make this industry very small. There's so many more people out there that could discover all this stuff. So if, sometimes when you see us getting in each other's way, or it's like people fighting over the same small territory, sometimes it's like, well, if we would just sort of like expand just a little bit, there's so many other consumers out there that could benefit from all this, especially as we've gravitated. Something we'll talk about a little bit later on is like your new projects that you're working on, that all of a sudden you're seeing some really cool companies with some really cool resources get into these more general, health-based products that can really help a broader spectrum of people, which I think is exciting for everyone. Exciting for us being in the industry because we know the industry is going to grow from it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think supplement reviews kind of started that culture of that echo chamber of reviewers that like constantly jerks themselves off about certain dosages of certain things. The forums and the reviews on supplement reviews. I mean, like, as someone who like brought a company to be #1 rated on there, when I was at NutriBrow, we were very adamant about being positive on there. We still understood that there were parts of that website that like it was hard to deal with because there was this echo chamber of like, it has to be this or that it's not good, which I think Justin and I do a lot of fighting against those dogmatic views on the industry. But I do have to say, I have to back you up, Drew. Like, I think I can think on like one hand the amount of people that both criticize the industry but also give credit for the industry. There are only a very few either brand owners or formulators that give credit, and I have to say it's about 50-50 for Drew. That being said, there is a lot of shit talk too, but it's always warranted.
Yep. No, that's completely fair, man. The thing is, I have no problem calling people out. At the same time, I have no problem with if I fuck up, I'm man, I own it. That's the thing. Everybody's gonna make mistakes. If you think you have the best thing ever, well, guess what? You're gonna be humbled. That's the thing is, and people will be amazed too, because Ben and I talk about this. Here's a little detail for you guys. So you guys missed out on an amazing thing called Supply Side. Every year they have Supply Side West in Vegas. We'll leave out, the other fun stuff. But the key part, Ben, he kind of was out of a fish out of water per se, because normally he's at like the Olympia, the Arnold. But coming to the ingredient side, I ran into him like, the fuck are you doing here? And see the guy Yeti, the only person there as out of place as I was. As he then came walking around with his camera, wearing shorts, just like me, which we would look like people thought we were related, which we could be. I mean, I did that because, I started the supplement reviewing thing. We're walking around, hey, just come with me. We went around to all the different ingredient groups and I introduced people. I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. And the thing is, I ran into a few other people formulation-wise. Specifically, exactly who I'm going to say. We stood outside their booth for about 20 minutes. Whatever, I don't really care. Ghost, they're awesome people. I love the team over there. Dan's a cool guy. I'd never see or hear anything from, but the formulation people behind it. And we chatted about some cool upcoming things. And Ben was like, bro, are you really telling them all the shit you're working on? I'm like, yeah. Why? Well, the thing is, by the time he gets on the plane, I'm going to think of something better and cooler. The thing is, if everybody, it's the same as strength conditioning. As soon as you think you have all the answers, you're like tight vest with everything, bro, someone else is going to figure it out. Somebody's going to do it better. So just be on the forefront. Think of more cool shit. Have everybody else grow. And sometimes I do a sliding golf clap. I'll see a product come out like, that's a good idea. Now I'm going to make it better. That's just kind of how it is. It feeds off it.
I
Yeah,
can relate. Oh,
Sorry, go ahead. No,
Oh
it's
no, I
your
was just
turn.
gonna say I can relate from the strength and conditioning side because I've been to plenty of expos about that and conferences, and everybody's there touting their new piece of biomechanically advantageous equipment, and then as soon as the expo's over with, lo and behold, there's 3 or 4 more patents filed, or things that have been created in the in that field. So I can relate to that. So yeah, good comparison.
The funny part about that too, so even before summernews.com, coinciding with that, I was a D1 strength coach at University of Nebraska Omaha. I was in charge of men's soccer, swimming and diving, and men's women's tennis.
You've been around, man.
I did full-time strength coach, doing
That's
grad
awesome.
school, while run supplements.com. I had a path I could go down 2 ways. I think I picked the right one. I make literally 4 times as much in supplements as I do as being a strength coach. That is a job you do for the labor of love, my man. It's not for the paycheck.
Well, see, and that's technically my background is strength and conditioning. So that's like I switched over after college because, well, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, that's awesome, man.
It's funny because that philosophy without, hey, I'll have something better. You know where that stems from? You probably love this shit. Eat this up a spoon. When I did my internship at Wayne State College, I went to a D2 school in Northern Nebraska and my grad work in Nebraska, Omaha. For my internship at Wayne State, I interned at a place called Visible Impact Fitness. Volleyball is huge business in Nebraska. And I interned under J.R. Epley and Boyd Epley, the godfather of strength conditioning. So, I mean, who can have a better internship? So I learned a lot. I'll leave that topic out because there's some behind the scenes stuff there. I'm like, I do not talk to the strength conditioning side anymore. Okay, we had a falling out. I'll leave it at that. But at the same time, it's like, holy shit, you literally started this profession. Yeah. So there's all these things. So another tidbit for the Still Expo.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, Drew, the only problem is you don't have a PhD in this.
I know.
And I hear
oh man.
I hear that's a prerequisite to be able to talk shit.
Yeah, in order to educate, you have to have a PhD.
It's been 16 minutes and I've already brought this up. So
we're in for
it.
You got to, ask me a question. Like, what do you think goes into an important product? Kick it off, Justin. When you look at a pre-workout, what 3 things do you look for? Name 3 ingredients.
Citrulline. No. I'm kidding.
Why do you hate citrulline?
No.
I'm going to hit all sides here.
What 3 ingredients do I look for? I don't know, man. What would be nice and what I like about what you do? I would like to see 3 different ingredients than the ones I see over and over again. I would love to see some a different spin on some certain things. I hate when people are like, "Hey, you want to see my pre-workout?" and I already know what it is before I even see it. Like, come on, right? Which is
so
cool.
The reason I teed Justin up here, I don't give a shit. Pick 3 ingredients. I don't care because I'm exactly it. For whatever reason, I call PhD. I think every year for like a whole 5 minutes of getting my doctorate, and like, nah, I don't want to go back to school. I'm good with 3. But okay, so the ongoing joke, Reed and team this up for us. I knew this was going to come up in the episode. 1, the citrulline thing. 2, of course, the PhD thing. You see, when you talk about supplementation, you need the consumer level. They're fucking stupid.
Oh my God, that's so good.
If you don't have a PhD, you should not be formulating supplements. I didn't actually formulate my own brand. I had somebody at a contract manufacturer do it, and then I just falsify studies and data, and I post the studies, and nobody actually fucking reads them. When I talk about creatine hydrochloride, it's a water-soluble form of creatine with only 2 studies. One of it's being in vitro, which in other words is, in a fucking test tube and not in actual human people. And the other one for Primera Health, which is the company that owns the patent for concrete. That's not a conflict of interest, as I say. But ignore the fact I don't know shit about studies. I'm just gonna talk in his voice until you watch me 15 minutes shaking a protein shake as I talk about a video.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That was fantastic.
I mean,
was that your first experience of that?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard a little bit.
I've never heard it. Well, I was on the phone with Ben earlier, and I was like, man, I don't really know if I'm going to have much to say tonight on the show. Like, I don't really know Drew that well. And then you just came out of the gates with that. I'm like, all right, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm a fun guy. Ben knows. Ben knows that expos the kind of like, Ben, if you want to go to the best dinner, you may have made many dinner invitations, but I recommend, sir, wherever I'm invited to go dinner, you go to that dinner because it's on the wall. Because that's
awesome,
where all the
man.
fun
I think
happens.
I have to say that dinner that we had with Sandler was like one of the best dinners I've had ever. I often tell people that it's funny. My mom's a professor. She actually does have a PhD, by the way. My mom was a professor in college. She loves when I tell her that I actually learned something because like all I am is a YouTuber, right? But I came home from that and I told her, I was like, that's the most I've learned in 3 days ever. Like my time at NutriWow, I learned a lot, but that was spread over 4 years. Like in different settings, I've learned a lot, but those 3 days, I learned so much. And it wasn't all like studies and stuff. It was like inner workings shit. So, yeah, I think, Jacob, how many times last weekend did I tell you got to come to supply side next year?
Like 4 or 5. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and start looking into it, man.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Amazing. Like the quality of stuff you take out of that and the networking alone is worth it. And a quick shout out to what Brandon mentioned there, the infamous Sandler. Okay, so this we know how to reference this is David Sandler. He's one of my dearest friends, one of my mentors. For God's sake, it's creepy because like when I first worked with him, he has the same background as me. Straight conditioning, came in supplements. He was at Isotory, the metabolic nutrition, and then at ProSups, where he was actually my boss. He brought me to ProSups. It's eerie because sometimes he'd work on something. I'm like, hey, check this out. When I worked remotely from Florida before I moved to Texas, I'd work on, hey, check this out. Okay, here's the pre-workout working on. Boom. He's like, did we talk about this already? I'm like, no, why? And he'll send me something back and like, dude, I worked on this like the other day, and we'd have a formula that was like 3 ingredients apart, like super close, because we think the same way. It's almost creepy. We have the same birthday, for God's sakes. But in a way, he's literally a 25-year-old older version of me and one of the best people I know in the industry. And I could count on maybe on the hand, like Ben mentioned, like 5 people that I would trust unconditionally. He's one of those people. I can't say enough about the guy. If you ever need somebody that's even better formula than I am, that's the man. He's the Yoda. It's actually the ongoing joke. He's the older Yoda. I'm like the baby Yoda and like the stroller. So that kind of actually stuck, I guess, good or bad. But yeah, man, he's a good dude.
He's a good guy. I podcasted with him alone and just like, I didn't even speak the whole like 45 minutes. I was just like, asked him one question and just let him go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's what happened last year. You know, we went to Olympia, but we didn't really like go to Vegas for Olympia. Just sort of kind of coincided. But everybody there was like, dude, you should be at supply side. Like, don't come to this. Like, supply side is where you should be, and that's. So I know like this year that was the plan anyway.
There's very small overlap, and that's kind of like that's what's cool about going to both of them is that you see 2 completely different crowds. I think Drew and I were really the only people that went to both, which is, I mean, it was kind of cool.
Last year.
Yeah.
You didn't?
What?
I was on the naughty list basically because
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's because I wasn't quite at Dragon yet, and I was at GAT. So GAT wasn't going to send me because I hadn't moved to Dragon yet. And then they said I couldn't go for Dragon, so I was kind of on the naughty list. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll stay home with all my friends.
Oh, go ahead, Jacob.
Oh, I was going to say, I definitely want to go. And honestly, even in the past 6 months of us, making our own product and learning the more of the back end stuff from all of you guys, like it's helped me as a retailer so much to know, for one, when my vendors are giving me the runaround and, making certain claims about things and where they're made and how they're made. So it just helps me expand my knowledge base in my field. So I definitely will make the flight out there. I'd love to come.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, I was going to ask you, so how long was it? Did you go to ProSups right after the supplement reviews? How did that gap get bridged?
Basically, supplement reviews.com, I left in, I believe, March, maybe mid-April. It was end of March, early April 2015. I worked in the stores and I worked independently as a consultant. And bro, that was a matter of like pounding, self-marketing, just getting your foot in the door places as a consultant to get a shot to help with things. Eventually, somebody gave me a shot to help work on things, and it stuck. And then from there, the reputation grew. So as a consultant, initially, interestingly, a lot of people know this, and funny enough, it's kind of how Sandler and I, once again, are like. He worked at Isotory. When I was in between, my first offer actually on the table was to go out to Denver, Colorado to work for Steve and Adelaide at Isotory. Long story short, that actually fell through because there was a acquisition of Isotory by Fit Life Brands. It just didn't work out. So then next thing you know, I'm getting an email from bang, Master Blaster, Jack Owalk himself. I'd never been to Florida in my life. I was on a plane. I flew down there, took a job offer, and 2 weeks later, I'm moving to Florida to work as product development manager and the scientific editorials manager. So my first full-time job in the industry was working at VPX. And I'll need no comment. So aside from that, that was kind of the launch point. I had to work off the grid for a year. I think I'm safe to say that as a nutritionist. And then on my day, my non-compete ended on June 1st of 2017. I already had it teed up. I officially took the role as Director of Scientific Affairs at ProSups. And I was there for 2 years, basically on the dot until I took a move to GAT Sport, formerly known as German American Technologies, in the beautiful middle of nowhere, Monroe, Connecticut. And then long story short, I got the offer to move back to Florida, take over at Dragon. I saw the potential there, and it's been no looking back ever since. We've been having a lot of fun down here in Florida. So
Yeah,
that's
you
kind
know,
of
what I thought was really cool, Drew, like we didn't really know each other like at the time, but I knew like of you, and there's like a few people that I would talk to, and actually I remember distinctly one of them doesn't like anybody, but he was like, oh, he's like, you got Drew's awesome. He's like, you would love Drew, and I remember like kind of following along with what you're doing. And one thing about like Dragon Pharma to me, great people over there. I'd always had a good relationship. Some of their formulas were kind of like, I was like, I don't know what you're kind of going for here. And like, but it was like kind of cool, but also kind of weird. And like flavors were kind of, but then when you kind of came in, I say this all the time when I talk about Dragon Pharma, I was like, you kind of came in and were like, I see everything that you do. And this is like, should be like an ultimate compliment, is like everything has a purpose. Everything has like a reason. It's efficient. That's why everything I think works really well. Whereas like before, it kind of, so you were talking about like seeing some potential, and that was, I remember seeing Dragon Farm and I was like, man, this brand seems like it has like, it's like got some potential, but it just needs a little bit of like TLC a little bit, I guess.
the way I saw it was that I like once again, I didn't know a lot about it. I knew they had a few products I'd seen in them. Of course, it kind of popped up. I got connected with it. When I look at what they had in the line, I'm like, okay, I don't hate this, but it needs some work. But then again, I was like, they have like 5 products. They haven't made all this shit yet. So here's the thing. Sometimes you go into a brand, we went into ProSups, they've been around a long time, it's established brand. People do things a certain way, there's a lot of stuff out there, and you may have to, update things, fix things, so on and so forth. And that's the growth of a brand. The cool part that's exciting about this is, one, getting into a brand that didn't have all these things. I got to build those products from the ground up in my vision. And 2 is that you don't have to go back, correct things. You can staunch everything, set a super high bar from the start, and just build upon that. It's kind of cool because I had all that learning experience, things that like didn't work, things that did work, being in the industry a long time. And of course, I'm not going to lie to you, a lot of the stuff I'm doing now, Dragon, is stuff I've been wanting to release for at least like 1 to 2 years. It's not the first time I thought of some of these things, but the cool part is getting, literally, my credit to my CEO, Jader, he's very good at doing this one thing, and among many things, is that he pays people and he lets them do their fucking job. He's like, hey, we want a new pre-workout. I'm like, okay, like, what do you want to compete against price-wise? It's maybe some badass. I'm like, okay, so you have to tell me what you want, though. Like, are we talking like a $50 pre? No. I'm like, okay, so. But within the certain slight guidelines, he lets me create. And, dude, you've seen the result of it. We went back in, we redid the packaging. Dude, I'm so hyped how it's turned out. The flavors, I hate making the same damn flavor twice. Even if it's a flavor I did somewhere else, I hate making the same thing twice. It drives me crazy. If I see another like fruit or like a cereal flavored protein, I'm gonna fucking put a bullet in something. I'm just so sick of this shit. Or if I see another candy flavor, like, oh, we made sweet and tart, or we made Sour Patch Kids. I'm like, yay, another. I mean, you couldn't think of another thing that you could possibly think of flavor wise, but I just hate making the same thing twice, because that's, innovation. A certain brand, and this is a light jab because I don't really like this brand, but I'm sorry. Innovation isn't releasing a new flavor every single week in a product you already have, just you took a flavor from another line. Ben's gonna know who I'm talking about. I mean, that's cool, but at the same time, guys, make a new flavor. You don't need the same flavor in 4 different products. Anyway, that's my drift there. So
yeah, so one flavor that I have, actually what I'm drinking now, is the apple juice flavor, which I thought was really cool. But tough one to pull off. It's kind of like an institution that you're kind of tackling there. Like, so how did like the idea of that one kind of come about?
Well, I'll be real with you, man. Honestly, when I go to flavor something, sometimes I'll think of like, that sounds good. But the first step, and here's your flavoring 101. So if you're not familiar with flavor chemistry, Ben, I know a little bit of this at NutriBio over there. When I go to flavor something, the first thing you do when ingredient wise, and here's a formulator in me, is I know what the ingredients are going to taste like. If you go and you taste just the raw base by itself, see if there's any notes in it. Okay, is there anything that's like kind of an off note, like a bitter note? Is that something like tannins, like tea? Is it very herbally? Is there stuff, you figure out what you have to cover. The first step of that, know what it tastes like, and then try to get the base to neutral. Start with putting in the masking flavors, so on and so forth. But then also have in mind, like, you know what? Okay, this has kind of bitter notes, in this case, aminos. What kind of flavors would pair well there? I'm like, you know what? Okay, I don't want to do this. Apple has some potential there. So we take a Honeycrisp apple flavor, play with the acids on it, and then it turns out to be a really nice flavor because, you think of apple, it has like some bitter aftertaste, a little bit of acid, and you take the apple, you have the bite, you have the tartric acid, just going to sting inside the tongue, the malic acid, that's the one you're going to feel in your jaw, citric acid, that's the most overused one, that's like the general mouth feel. But if you can find a balance with that, if I bite into an apple, what do I want to feel? If it's a Granny Smith, you're going to have that sharp, crisp bite. What's the sweetness level, appropriateness? And to kind of think of flavors that, okay, you know what? I can kind of steer this in a direction to go. Don't put a square peg in a round hole. If you're trying to make a cotton candy flavored Dr. Fear, it's probably not going to taste good. First, you go over things that have natural bitter notes or things that can have a little bit of fermented notes like apple ciders or apple juices, or peach guava works really well. You think of like a natural peach, which is another flavor of ours that has the peach core, all these type of things, those nuances, you know what? Let the nuances and the tricky parts of the flavor complement it. Don't try to work against it. And that was what we did with another one here. I actually have these products here. Wifey was nice enough to bring them over to the computer. Like, of course, the peach guava, the peach core, and the Dr. Fear, and of course, the Pico 2 is in that one as well. That one was a neuromorph, and Justin talks about this one quite a bit, is it has a lot of bitter herbal things in there. I'm like, it has a tea flavor. So we came with a mango tea. And you can just kind of get some direction from there and kind of throw stuff at a wall, see what sticks sometimes,
I think that's something we've seen a lot in the industry this year is like playing towards the strengths of a lot of flavors. Alphaline took a really bold move and put grains of paradise in the product and didn't make it spicy, and it worked out for them. But for the most part, we've seen a lot of companies like EAAs playing towards like that peach guava, that fermented amino taste. We've seen like Ghost do like their spicy martinis with the chlor burn and stuff like that. So we are no longer trying to put the square pegs in the round holes, thank God.
And I love it.
Yeah, because I could say the same thing about like just the last Dr. Fear. I remember Dragon Pharma sending me over some Dr. Fear before, and I mean, super cool formula. That was so bad that even me, I'm like, I'm not drinking this. This is terrible.
I'm not gonna lie to you. The first time I got to Dragon, I got a container of strawberry lemonade Dr. Fear. Took it with me. Wifey here in the kitchen. She knows what I'm gonna say here. I took a scoop of it on leg day. We're living down in Miami. We had a friend's place for our house is ready down in Miami here. We moved down here. I got to the gym. I put a scoop in my shaker, shook it up. I took a drink, and I literally left the rest of the container at the gym. I donated to the gym. It was that bad. I'm like, who released this? So I still give Jader shit about this, but that's case in point. Things have to taste good.
But like what you were talking about, Ben, I think it was it Glaxon we've had a lot of these conversations with about like exactly what Drew's saying, letting the ingredients themselves sort of walk you towards your flavor rather than trying the square peg and round hole. That's really cool. I know like you sent me some really long messages the other day in depth about what ratios to use the sucralose and ACE-K and stuff like that, and how that sort of plays out, that I think people I think would find that pretty interesting. It was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different flavor chemistry things. Just like it's typically a lot of people look at things, oh, I know what that is. Why do you need both sucralose and exsulfate potassium, so on and so forth. And it's funny because Justin was listening to the message and he shot me one for your listen to the restaurant. It sounds like teacrine and dynamine. I'm like, well, exactly. The thing with sucralose is typically you have a higher ratio of sucralose to ACE-K. You can get away a lot of times using just sucralose in flavor systems. I'm just talking about artificially sweetened, not monk fruit, stevia, so on and so forth. Stick to topic because I know somebody's going to fucking ask about that later. The thing about sucralose and ACE-K, each of them have distinct flavors profiles to them. Sucralose is super sweet up front. It gives that nice, super sharp, super sweetness. But the problem is toward the back end, it can have that kind of flavor burn as per se, or it can also just kind of level off and leaves that weird aftertaste. Exsulfate potassium, when you put it on your tongue, if you taste test both, it's not going to be as sweet. But it kind of has more sweetness toward the back end of the flavor. In other words, after you've had it in your mouth for a few seconds, so it doesn't have the initial sweetness. It takes a little bit of time to build. So when you combine sucralose and exsulfate potassium and ACE-K together, it has a nice, smooth flavor sweetness curve that delivers a nice flavor. Typically, you want to have sucralose higher than ACE-K. I don't think I've ever seen it the other way around. For example, say for those referencing at home or trying to make their own pre-workout, for example, like a scoop of, like, say, amino is a good starting point, maybe like 120 milligrams of sucralose and 80 milligrams of ACE-K. Would be like a decent ratio. You can go up, you can go down, so I need less sweet, more sweet, so on and so forth. Sometimes it's preference. But this is kind of how they play together and they make a nice flavor overall. So that's kind of how I explained that to Justin the other day, because people for some reason are bitching about like ACE-K and like, it's fine. There's a reason for using it.
Funny, I probably know like 3 people in the industry who actually know what they're doing with flavoring. Like, and that's coming from someone who actually went to school for food sciences, and I understand this kinds of stuff. A lot of people are like, let's put more sucralose. Like, I mean, let's be real. Like, most people in the industry are getting samples from flavor companies and mixing them together, adding sucralose and calling it a day. And that doesn't really cut it anymore when you got to go up against Wilkie at Ghost. It just, like, all of us know there's always a bigger fish, and people are really starting to get pressure. People are getting pressure to the point where Nutribio actually cares about their flavors now. You know, so.
Yeah, and actually, that's what it was reminding me of. Is I remember when we were talking to the guy that does the flavoring over at Nutribio, and he went into this conversation like super. It was awesome. Like, I was like kind of blown away because that really wasn't where we were at not that long ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're bringing in like, you know, we have all these flavoring houses now. It's such a big part of it, which is a good thing. You know, that's where you're seeing some cool stuff. So
They
there's a lot of
invested
science to
time
it.
in him. They sent him out too. I forget the company that we were talking to at Supply Side West that tried to take me to that university, Drew.
Oh, this Fona. Okay, so
Yeah.
For those, I don't quite like, I don't care if people know this or not. It's not just that you got the Google, you can figure this shit out. So I like using a variety of flavor houses. And the way here's flavor house. Here's a different thing. A lot of times, how this is kind of segued, as Justin was speaking to. A lot of times in the past, and some companies are guilty of doing this too. Every contract manufacturer thinks they're a flavor expert. They think they're a flavor house. That, oh, we can flavor it. And like, no, you can't. Go ahead, I'll let you try. But then sometimes I'm like, okay, so I don't approve literally one thing. I need like 3 revisions. Okay, increase the sucralose, decrease this, increase the acid. Like, wow, okay, that's good feedback. I'm like, okay, do you want me to work for you? Do I send you like a
Right.
invoice for my time? Like,
I just did your job.
I'll fly it out there and do it myself. The thing with that is that as amazing, like flavor house is kind of a newer thing. Like there didn't get a lot of press, but now there's so many out there. Like ones there, like the Ben is speaking of is Fona. They've been around a long time. And they have a lot of cool things where people are getting more in depth in flavor. They have like flavor universities. They're free workshops that now they're hosting online we can go to. They talk about different sweetness levels, different applications, so on and so forth. They do a good job in terms of setting out marketing material for flavors in the food industry that are trending, as well as candy, so on and so forth, like flavor inspiration idea. That's cool. Some other ones out there, there's Sensapure, which is out in Salt Lake City. There's Zoom. I'm not a fan at all of Gold Coast. I don't really care if they hear this. I don't really like their flavors. They're not very good. An amazing one out in California is Hasagawa. Is another very good one. They do a great job in dairy applications. So the thing is, I don't like putting all my eggs in one basket. Some flavor houses have different strengths of different things. Like some are very good at making masks for flavored products. Some of it do an amazing job strictly in proteins where their stuff kind of is lacking. Some do an amazing job at masking things, making great candy flavors, fruit flavors, and say their protein flavors just lackluster. So you kind of have to know the strengths of your flavor house. So for example, if I don't have the time to fly out, I'm like, okay, I'm making this new protein. These guys are really good at this application. I'm going to send the base of this to them and have them come up with some base flavor samples and we'll tweak versus, oh, I'm going to send to these guys. And then they get back to stuff like, guys, what did you send me? Did you taste this before you sent it? So it's just kind of, you play the strengths, you know, just like anything out there. You go to the team that can best help you complete your project. But that's a quick overview of flavor houses.
So, I want to talk about pump ingredients.
Oh, you do.
I'm very curious because, Drew, you refuse to put citrulline in products, but you happily put S7 in products.
Oh, God.
I know we're going there.
You're like a science guy, right? Why would a science guy prefer S7 over citrulline?
Well, because, my friend, this is kind of like cherry picking data. I'm a big fan of an ingredient you may have heard of called nitrosigine from Nutrition 21. Here's the reason. I have no problem with citrulline. This actually stemmed in how hard, fast I was against this. And this is actually, I think you guys will appreciate this portion here. So when we were putting together High Dicom back in early 2019, Sam and I were sitting in the office and I'm like, you know what? Like, look at all these products like the pre-gym, all these other ones out there. There's mega dose of citrulline. I'm like, fuck, does every single pre-workout have 8 grams of citrulline, 6 to 8 grams? Like, okay, it's the same thing. Citrulline is great, but there's nothing special about it. I mean, great. This was, from Formulated in 2012. Stepani himself is kind of one that brought it to the forefront. Kudos to him. But why is everybody doing the same thing? There's more efficient ways to go about the same thing. So here, let me run this by you. Ben, what I want you to know, ask me, for example, I was thinking Dragon Pharma. What does my pre-workout Venom do? Go ahead and ask me.
What's Venom do, Drew?
Okay. Well, Venom, in a very simple way, it helps you increase energy, focus, training endurance, pump, and power output. Now ask me, what does, say, the leading competition do? What does their pre-workout do?
What's the leading company do with their pre-workout?
Well, you see, their pre-workout is designed for energy, focus, training endurance, pumps, and things. So that's the thing. You're not reinventing the wheel. Everybody's pre-workout, you want to accomplish the same thing. So my issue here is why not find a more efficient way to get from point A to B? You don't have to use the same ingredients to accomplish the same goal. You can do it more efficiently. So enter this case, an example back when I was doing Icon, now translate that to Venom because I'm a huge fan of the ingredient. I like using this example, nitrosigine. Okay, citrulline converting argon in bloodstream is what has a nitric oxide vasodilation. It's great, but it takes 6 grams of that shit. So why not use something that has clinical data, which is really cool, done by third-party tests, of 1.5 grams nitrosigine competes, if not beats, against 8 grams of citrulline malate. Now, the nenext thing, well, fish oil malate so many parts of malic acid. Well, then citrulline malate, if you want to go that rabbit hole, it doesn't technically exist in nature and freaking manufacturing. It's a blend of citrulline and malic acid. But point being, I feel that the bang for the buck you get out of something like nitrosamine, you get a better return on it. You get more claims you can make on it. You get other things that go outside of just sports performance. There's cardiovascular markers, there's renal markers, overall just health markers that improve upon using nitrosamine. There's that adaptation over time, which is pretty cool. You get the inositol, which is great for the brain. So there's a lot of benefits that go beyond just pump. It's a very cool bang for your buck ingredient. And the other part is just I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to use citrulline because everybody else is using it. I don't want to do the same damn thing. So that kind of cascaded me down that road. I'm like, you know what? Let's take this a step farther. How about everything we do, we say, fuck what everybody else is doing, and let's make something completely different. Let's take a different approach to accomplish something in a cooler way. The thing is, at the end of the day, this is all marketing. I have the cool science behind it. I have rationale for it. But the thing is, I need a story to tell. Why did you do this? Nothing goes out of my door unless it tastes amazing, but I can rationalize it and explain it. And when it comes to the S7, I'm not a huge fan in terms of as a standalone ingredient. I know that's the thing. Oh, I use S7. Would I recommend that as a standalone pump ingredient? No. It sounds really cool to be increased nitric oxide by 230%. But at the same time, that looks like glucosamine and chondroitin. Oh, that's all done in elderly populations that have like hypothetical or like basically, what was it, perceived improvements in flexibility and joint pain. And as far as S7, the data is, it's iffy. The reason I like it is in combination as it complements other things in the ingredient. So I've been thinking of this way, like an example of, say, our Mr. Veins. It's a three-pronged approach for achieving maximum pumps. I know, I came up with that just now, right? Is you have vasodilation, enhanced nitric oxide production, and relaxed blood vessel dilation from the nitrosamine. You have the S7, which helps prevent it basically inhibits the enzyme for breaking down nitric oxide. So it works in combination along with the nitrosamine to prolong that nitric oxide in the bloodstream. It's a complementary ingredient. That's how I view it. In that case, that's what we have in the venom. And then the Mr. Veins, the stem-free with Nootropics, it takes a step further, helps cell volumization by providing Hydromax. It draws water in the muscle cells. So I knew that's where you're going to poke at me with the S7. Once again, I would use as a stint. I like it as a complementary ingredient. And now I'm pointing to Justin over there. The same reason when it comes to the venom there, and the guys literally just talking about this day, I'm laughing because I'm like, yep, I'm that guy, is, you talked about this yesterday, is theanine in pre-workouts. So once again, and I'm completely aware of this, but the thing is, he hit it on the head. And I think to his credit, he does an amazing job on his IG Lives. Is Tim Gritzman over at Natural Body. Somebody asked him this as well. And that's another thing I know with the Ben. I'm like, why does everybody ask the same question to 3 different people on the same day? It's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
Theanine pre-workouts, I like it to a certain point. Exactly. Too much, you're going to be zonked out. The alpha brain waves kick in. It's made for relaxation. However, in the case of this, when you pair with caffeine in place of teacrine, which I'll get to in a second, you can help relax that out. It help prolong just the overall mood enhancement, have you from that jitters, anxieties, and so forth, and level it out. I don't like going above 100. Even then, that's kind of on the upper tier of that. But, you know, in that case, we tried it out. We did beta testing. It seemed like a sweet spot, and people have liked it. So that's why the theanine's at the level. But too much of a good thing,
yeah.
There's a lot of points in there that was good. There's tons of talking points within there. But go ahead, Ben.
Well, my favorite part is because you broke it down. You were like, well, there's not a lot of data on the citrulline thing, and nitrosamine has more data. I'm like, man, Drew, you're really setting yourself up to like not have anything for S7 because if you really rely on data as your main argument, S7 lacks there. But when you talk about like your own testing, your own like theorizing as an accessory to the normal nitrosamine being the main ingredient, I agree a lot. I've said it a few times here. I don't think that S7 is that great on its own, but I do feel a difference from it. I think when you add it to a large formula, there's something there. And I think that the big thing here too is that we talk with a lot of formulators or brand owners of brands that like don't have the same overhead as Dragon does. And Drew does a really good job of formulating for companies that spend a lot more money than like we talked with Will Whitlock from Leviathan, and I love Will. I love his formulas, but Will doesn't have to pay the same bills that Dragon does. I saw Dragon at the Olympia. They had 6 videographers. You know, like there's more of a need for a larger margin with Dragon. And your point about getting to the destination in a more efficient path, not a lot of people will understand that. Not a lot of people will understand why your pre-workout can't be 28 grams. But the fact of the matter is, if you took that product and didn't tell them the formula, a lot of people would think that it was a lot bigger than it was.
Yep.
So I have a lot of respect for that. And in some of my videos, I talk about how like sometimes people break the rules, and there's a few people that I will trust to break those rules. I was talking, I think, on the last podcast, how like when you learn to write music, you have to learn the rules so that you can learn how to break them. And there are only a few people who I trust to think that way. Which you can call me biased all you want. I really don't care. I trust Drew.
Yeah, because the one thing that I say this all the time is sometimes I'll look at who's putting together the products and stuff like that, and there's some people that will put together a formula and then just manufacture it, right? Never test it because they don't, it might be a smaller company, they don't have the means to do it. But then there's companies that, and that's what's cool about, I think, the time that we sort of live in now, and what Ben and I know we fight a lot against is trying to get people to keep an open mind about certain things. You know what I mean? Because now you're seeing pump capsules that don't have citrulline in them at all, or don't have nitrogen or something, and they're delivering like ridiculous pumps for people. And it's like, right, exactly like what Drew's saying. You don't have to, it's not one way to get to the destination. Granted, I think like Drew, you're saying citrulline's fine, man. I mean, have at it, but been there, done that. So let's find an alternate path to this. Let's get off the beaten path a little bit. Let's flex our muscles a little bit with how we can sort of formulate and do some cool stuff. And then you're testing it, and then we're testing it, and we're talking about it. And next thing you know, you have some new things that we can do. Like, that's just cool shit. It's like, why would you want it any other way than that? It just drives me insane. So it's like the theanine thing. Like I said it today, I was like, I've used lots of pre-workouts with theanine in it that I like it. But there's just so many people they take like a regular caffeine source and throw in a shit ton of theanine. It's like, just stop doing that. Like, I don't know when that became a thing, but you didn't even test this product. I bet you know what I mean? But it's like, sometimes it makes sense. It's like an S7 thing. So that was it. That whole little spiel you went on there, Drew, we could talk about that all day.
The testing thing reminds me of a discussion I've had with a few other companies, which, Drew, I don't know where your stance is on this, but I'd be interested to hear you talk about it. N-acetyl-L-tyrosine versus tyrosine. I hear some brands that I honestly trust what they do use N-acetyl-L-tyrosine, and I can't find any data that actually supports N-acetyl-L-tyrosine against L-tyrosine. But when I take the products that have phenol, I still feel a great focus benefit from it. And all of the brands are like, listen, in our tests with our friends and our people, like, we felt it better at this ratio or this dosage. And I know the data says otherwise, but we like it. And maybe this is like another S7 situation, but it is what it is.
I'm going to give her two things here, because this is what is actually kind of funny about this. So obviously, sometimes I get complaints about this all the time, like, oh my God, I got my Venom container and there's not a whole lot of powder. I'm like, there's still 40 servings of the small, 20 of the large. Trust me, it's in there. Sold by weight, not by volume. Yeah. So I think a caveat of this, a reason, like, and Ben actually, like, Derek, I was like, bro, what the fuck? That's horrible. Like, because when you're reviewing, what was it?
I know, yeah.
Mr. Vane's, it's a simple formula. Bro, it's not a simple formula, because there's actually some cool shit nobody else reviews. Like Opinion Galanke, you don't see a lot of that. The new Gonda was one of the first to use that, so on and so forth. It's a badass nootropic pump and pre. I'm like, it's a true nootropic formula. Everybody else is using, here's a good example, copy and paste a shit ton of tyrosine, choline tartrate, and like maybe two other things, a shit ton of citrulline, and they call it a day. There's nothing in there that's going to give you that locked in laser focus. People hear stim free, they think they're not going to feel it. This isn't a pitch for Mr. Vane's, but I'm saying you take that shit and like, damn, I feel good. I feel focused. With that being said, this kind of caveat where sometimes people look at something like you were saying, like, it doesn't have like a 28 gram scoop. So fuck that guy. Jim Stepani, he kind of came out of the gate and started, the full transparency, anti-proprietary blend, concentrated pre-workout. Here's the thing with that. Everybody kind of got in that mode, or it has to have all these things, or it's not good, or it's underdosed, so on and so forth. And that kind of everybody went to that full bore, full transparency, mega dose scoop. I still like the full transparency label. I mean, some people, especially Boca James, is like, man, fuck it, blend your shit. But I think people feel it, like it. I'm like, cool. I put a label, I have no problem with it. You want to copy me? Go ahead. I'll make something better. Same thing. It got to the point where everybody is mega dosing things. Now, if you scale back and use less, people think, it's not a good pre. This has this, and missing this, and missing this. And I'm like, do you really think that missing that one ingredient is not why you don't look the way you look and you're not fucking jacked? I think maybe there are things in your life you need to focus on. Just like when people bitch and moan, like, I need to have whey protein hydrolysis, or, this is a whey protein concentrate isolate blend. It's trash. I'm like, you really think that extra 1.5 grams of fat is why you're a fucking couch potato? Like, really? Okay. Anyway, But that being said, it kind of like worked against us, the industry, where people got so far into that mega dosing things, anything less now in terms of smaller doses, contrary to things, like, oh, it's not as much. That's the thing too. And I'll counter with that. Like, okay, so you're telling me that before Stepani, you didn't give a fuck about it, even if there's no data whatsoever. And a lot of times it's synthetic fucking amphetamine with DMAA. You didn't want any data on that. You all you cared about was how you felt. So keep that in mind. How about you try it, see how you feel, instead of worrying about, some other shit. So it's interesting how people pick and choose what battles they want to fight and what they want to bitch about.
Yeah, it's always kind of odd. And that's like what it usually comes down to. I think it's like, when people always ask me about protein flavors and what protein to take or pre-workouts, it's like, man, I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of people making some different things or trying some different paths. And the fact that you can like walk into a Natural Body Inc. and there's like 40 pre-workouts there, and you could literally grab each one and probably get a great workout, or walk into Jacob's store. Like we were having a conversation at TNS the other day with, it was like Chris and Doug and everybody was standing there, and they were like, somebody was like, pick out your 3 favorite pre-workouts from this wall. And I'm like, shit, I don't know if I can. There's like, there's like 15 of them that I would use 100% like that day. It's like, that's fun. It's like, so get out there and try it. Like, I get it that people don't want to they're scared, and, and I get it, the marketing's heavy and stuff like that, and people get worried, but it's like, at the same time, once you sort of hone in on the few things that you need, that's when the fun stuff like kind of begins, like the getting out there and experimenting stuff.
I also really think like these people that worry so much about these full dosages, like I posted a product that I think 2 grams of betaine, and someone's like, it needs to be 2.5. I'm like, all right, like, do you think there's like little receptacles inside of your cells, and they are 2.5 grams in volume, and the second it hits 2.5 grams, when you get all those benefits, like, but if you only have 2 grams, you're fucked. Like, you don't get it. I'm like, you can't possibly think this simply. You can't think of this in absolutes. So Drew, I got to ask, like, this has kind of been a constant theme in our episodes, is this whole clinical dose versus, I don't even know, the Joey Savage style, I would maybe even call it, like, of actually hitting pathways and working backwards. Do you think, what do you think is going to prevail in the end?
I think it just kind of comes down to different types of ingredients. I mean, sometimes, yes, it depends. Here's the thing. When it comes to dosing things, I typically like to do things, and if I want to make a claim about something where the data supports it, that's kind of where I have things to live. If you want to use claims, you have to, for example, certain things. Like, for example, like, go back to nitrosity. If you will make X, Y, and Z claims, it has to be a set specific amount. If it's something outside of that, where you want to have it as a complementary ingredient, you could probably go around it. A lot of times, if it's a non-branded ingredient, that's where you can kind of have that leeway there. So with the branded stuff, you have to go with agreement-wise, has to use a certain amount inclusion-wise. Yeah. In the end, it is interesting because people are they start with as long as I feel it, it's great. Everything's proprietary blended. That's where this whole uproar of people wanting to be informed, knowing where their products came from, and the full transparency clinical dosing kind of came into play, for good and to bad. I do think that in the end, things need to be in there within reason at a good dosage. I hate seeing things like, for example, it may or may not be the original NO shotgun. It has a 23-gram scoop with 24 ingredients. How do you think that math works out, right? That's putting things in there to have them in there. If something's in there with a purpose at a reasonable dosage where, you can substantiate it and, in other words, explain it and rationalize it, I think that's a different story versus, I have 13 different things in here and a 5-gram scoop. Then, okay, now you're just pixie dusting. So it's a fine line you walk there. Some are just blatant versus some are, man, this is actually, okay, I like this mix. And to your credit, this is actually it. That's a good example is Glaxton and Joey Savage there does a great job of that. There's a lot of things in there. I'm like, you know what? I see what you did there. I like that. So it goes both ways, my man. It's all how the story's told.
So talking transparency, I'm sorry, this is like one thing I want to take this one more step. You keep saying, like, you didn't mind talking about who your flavor houses are. You didn't mind talking about your proprietary blends and going full transparency. But why won't you talk about where you're manufactured?
If somebody asked me, sure. But then Ben and I talked about this the other day. If somebody really wants to know, I'm like, okay, it's made X, Y, and Z. Okay, then it's exactly as I point to Ben, and you point us too, is like, okay, if I were to tell you, okay, it was made at, say, a massive one that I do like a lot. I don't use them at this brand I had before, Armada. Okay, go ahead. Here's their phone number. Go ahead, check them out. The average consumer, it's kind of like a dog chasing a car. They really want the fucking car, but they catch it. What are you going to do with it? If I tell you where it's made, like, what does that mean to you as a consumer? If you're in the industry, like, yeah, it's a fucking trash go, man. Versus to the average person, like, hey, it's made, this is a great co-man over here. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to their website. And I swear to God, there's certain co-mans I know, and they may or not be in business anymore. They say GMP certified, all these things. I'm like, you have none of these things.
Yeah.
So for a consumer, if they want to do their due diligence, look at, you know, the website, it's scary as it is, you can say whatever you want. Like, what does that mean to a consumer? So I see where you're getting at, but if somebody really wants to know, sure.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
That's all I wanted out of Drew for the whole 2 hours. So I'm done.
Shit, right? Because then you said that I was just gonna ask you a question and I can't remember what it was. Because now I'm thinking about like what you just said. I totally agree with you because we've had this conversation. Ben and I were just talking about this the other day, where it's like I think that a lot of consumers, because we're getting down to like the nitty gritty with choosing between brands. You know, a lot of people make cool stuff and a lot of people are really, so consumers are like, man, I have like a million choices to choose from. It's like, well, if I ask, like, you don't have to run around and be like, oh, here's where you manufacture. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. But I think like if people, at least the consumers I talk to, they're like, well, if I ask, it would be cool to know. And then maybe that sort of builds the bond between the customer and the brand, which I think is becoming kind of it's tough, right? There's so much competition and stuff out there. But I'm the same way where it's like, well, even if you tell someone, you know, the manufacturer, but now we're starting to see some weird stuff with manufacturers and people are paying a little bit of attention to that. It's like, well, you know, should I be concerned about this? And, you know, stuff like that. So it's kind of, I get it. I get everybody's side of it, which is kind of like, I think, Ben, what we usually do, it's kind of like, well, here's the facts. And then you know, you're the consumers, you figure out what you want to do with it. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I do think something that could be cool that if Philiband really want to do this, here's your $1 million idea. If, you know, it could be changed in the landscape if a contract manufacturer goes out of their way and starts marketing to consumers. Like, we are the manufacturers of dietary supplements. Like, tell your own story. Because the thing is, like, they're kind of off the shadows, or in the shadows. I mean, like, you don't really hear about them. Like, as a consumer, you know nothing about them. Like, if I were to ask, like, oh, where's you know, where are those shirts made? I'm like, fuck, that guy, you told me the factory. I don't know what that means. I have no idea, right? Yeah. It's the same thing. So if they were actually active market to consumers, I think that could be a play for them, where then it wouldn't matter if people were asking, where is it made? It's interesting because the good point with this, nobody actually has ever asked me where my stuff is made. So I guess I've never actually had that question. I'm like, sure, it's made here. Well, go ahead. You want to visit them? Here's a number. The guy, Kyle. The point, it's interesting though. Here's a question back at you guys and Ben on the brand side. Have had people, they're getting very nosy on things, and this I do not disclose because fuck you, to a degree. Oh, how much sucralose is in this per scoop? How many flavor? Like, you want to know the flavor formula now? No, that I am keeping to myself because why would I give you that information? If it's like something for a safety issue, like, oh, how much caffeine is in this? Of course, that's in the label. In terms of the proprietary formula for the flavor system, no, that I'm not giving you, not because, oh, it's bad for you, but like, why would I want to give you like all this work I did, this R&D work? That you have to figure out yourself.
It was kind of funny because I was sitting with Mark Leisure a couple weeks ago, and we were like talking back and forth about flavors and stuff, and he stops. He was like, if you work with a contract manufacturer, do you own your flavors? I've never had to worry about that. And I was like, this is a big discussion here, Mark. And I think that owning that IP around your flavor can make or break you in terms of other people using that manufacturer. I think we all have been able to see trends for like really parallel flavors between different products that are clearly made at the same manufacturer.
Oh, I see it. I see it with two. I was gonna say I have two products that are made. One of them is ours from our contract manufacturer, and the other one comes from the same manufacturer. Exact same flavor across the board. Which I don't care about. And I was making a point on one of the vlogs we did last week when we picked up our recent batch of the stuff. And I said, you know, I'll tell people where our manufacturer is. I don't care, because most people that we tell, I mean, no offense, they don't have the resources to go and actually make stuff happen. And for two, half of our customers on the retail side of things think that I'm making it in a vat in a bathtub in the back of my damn store.
Right.
So it's like it helps very much to let them know the chain for me as a small retailer and a small brand. But then again, most people don't really know. They're like, oh, I had a guy today, actually. I kid you not. He came in. So, man, like, how do you do this? Do you have like a mixer in the back? And like, do you just like put stuff together? And I'm like, if only you knew, man. If only you knew.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that the big point that you have to make is that if the flavor that you make, like, makes your whole brand, you don't have a very strong brand. Right. But at the same time, if you spend a lot of research time into creating a flavor, you don't want someone else to take that benefit. And
Oh, exactly.
especially if you're at the same level as that other company and they can market that flavor as well as you do, then you have a problem. But, you know, all these different brands, like, there's got to be a lot of people going to Armada right now and be like, I want the Chips Ahoy flavor. Yeah. And it's like Tom Cruise, and he was like, you can't handle the flavor. Like, you wouldn't be able to market this flavor. Yep. If you weren't that level. So it takes a lot more than just the formula to put it out.
Where I have a problem with is sometimes it's not so much somebody copying it. One, yeah, brands do tend to, oh, can you make this flavor? And they go the same co-man, whatever. What I have a big problem with is this issue is if a co-man goes out and actively tries to sell your flavor to other brands. I'm like, look, motherfucker, really? Mm-hmm. I brought you I've had that happen once, and lo and behold, they did not make anything for us again. This was a previous brand, and I'm like, oh, you're done. Like, you're really going out actively selling the formula that I worked on flavor-wise. It's a good flavor that you guys like that I come up with. Like, bro, fuck yourself. Yeah. In terms of like if somebody, hey, we offer this. If somebody comes to the co-man and say, hey, I know it's made here. Could you make me something similar? I don't really care because I did it first. It's already out there. I'm cocky in this regard. I'll make something different and something better. Go ahead, have it. By the time you're on with that one, I'll be on to something else. So. You know, it's like this is a compliment. Imitation is a sincere form of flattery. And this to Ben's point, yeah, you can't handle the flavor. You can't market as well as we can. So, yeah. All valid points, man.
Yeah, and that's something that Jacob said that I want to go back to that I thought was because we talk a lot about making the industry bigger and appealing to consumers, but there's such a huge, and we talked about this with Glaxon, we talked about it actually with like all the brands. There's such this great divide between most consumers out there and then the people within the industry, because we talk about, I mean, you guys talk about things that go way over like people's heads, and when a lot of people walking in a Jacob store are like, oh man, you know, do you make this stuff yourself kind of thing? And or you get like the general questions. Ben, I know that's like one thing you and I talk about, like why we do questions and so much. You get these questions from people, most of them they're asking about is the flavoring safe, what is caffeine kind of thing, where it's like those are still the people that you're trying to bring into the industry. So we're trying to bridge that gap between all like the higher level like things you're doing with these products, but then also making sure you don't leave all these people behind that are trying to sort of get their way in too. So that was something that Jacob, you said. I just wanted to highlight that point. That was a good point.
Makes everyone's job really hard because there's like so many different levels to what you have to educate and what you have to account for with the things that you put out into the industry. Like, I know all of us love to pander to the Stack 3D commenters, and you know, that's great. Like,
it's a population of its own.
Yeah. Like, I was helping someone out with a pre-workout a couple weeks ago, and I helped him put together a formula. And he came back to me like 6 hours later. He's like, "Wait, we forgot to put beta alanine in it. We have to put beta alanine in it." I was like, "No, you don't." He's like, "Well, what are they going to say online?" I'm like, doesn't matter what they say. It's matter what you tell them, right? And but then there's like, you know, the mid-level consumers that aren't super educated, but they know a little bit. And then there's the brand new consumers that you have to somehow acquire and like get them like speed ready on your formula, because especially if you're someone like Drew, whose formulas like have to be appreciated, there has to be some education to understand it. Most people don't go to brands like Dragon, NutriBio, Morphogen, like whatever, and just blindly purchase. They most of the time understand, and that's why they're purchasing. So it's very hard to educate all of the masses in the way that you want to, because you really only have so much time to keep their attention as well. Drew's done a really good job with his content with Dragon Pharma, which I have to think was a part of you getting that role. Like that sounds just like so up your alley to be on those videos.
Oh yeah. So the feedback's been good, and a lot of people generally they love the content. And that's a big part too, is like I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy educating, and this actually goes back to anything and how it goes on being a product. Like people are like, oh man, you do a great job, this. I'm like, hey man, it's not all just me. It's not all a matter of me just sitting in my office. A big part of what Ben pointed to that like I feel makes me valuable is that I'm able to tell a story, that I'm able to educate people on it in a way that they can understand. It's like, oh, because you don't understand it. Like, bro, like there's shit like, you know, people like, they expect me to know every research stuff off my head. I'm like, hold on. Like, I know the basis of this. I'd have to hold it for you. I don't remember it because there's so many ingredients. But here's the thing, especially if you have a massive sales team. You know what? The sales guys, you guys are the rockstar store. The key is you have to think out a way to explain something not just to the first person, because there's a big difference in me going to a store, standing there with our product on the shelf. Somebody comes in, asks me about it. I explain the product. Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to buy this. But the magic comes. How do you make material? How do you take that product that you make to educate, for example, for you at the retail store? How do I make a product, educate the sales guys, like say my guy for domestic, to have him understand it, to be able to educate the retail store and how they can understand it, to educate the consumer? You see how there's that fall off in the chain there. And some people I don't think do a good enough job in terms of, one, extending that content or taking the time to explain things in a certain way, or certain things, they're able to, remember. And that's why that thing I said earlier with like, hey, what does your product do? What does this product do? Oh, I do the same thing. But we're not taking the same road. We're taking a more efficient, more novel, more innovative, and more, more fun approach to doing things. It tells a story.
Yeah, it's kind of like in this industry, and well, especially everything with e-com these days, everything's about funnels, right? You have your funnel and everything's funneled online, but there's a funnel when it comes to that system, exactly like what you're talking about, Drew. I think there's the people, a huge group of people will see an ad, and some of them will just go buy. And then there's the next level down. People are like, oh, I want to know more. And then you'll see maybe look at the formula. And then there's the next group. They're like, huh. And then they watch your video and they're like, oh, now you sold them. You know what I mean? Rather than a lot of times we just look at this as ads online, like how many times can we retarget them? Well, that's kind of like in application being retargeted. It's like you're hitting, customers, what it costs, what it takes to get that customer to make a purchase. Maybe it's a comfort level as they go deeper and deeper into the system. And maybe it's the person at the end that's asking, where you manufacture or something. And you're like, well, here's where we manufacture. And they're like, okay, now but it's another thing that you see really effective with brands. I think Dragon Pharma is doing a really good job of it. I watch their content a lot. I don't watch like any brand's content because it's so fucking boring at this point. But like I watch Dragon Pharma's got cool formulas, they're really cool marketing. But then you watch Drew's stuff and it's like, that stuff, matters to people. We're seeing Glaxon, we keep talking about them and you guys, it's like that whole painting that entire picture, people really appreciate. And, you get people to build brand loyalty that way, which has been such a huge problem, I think, within the industry, because people are just like, well, what's next? But you can actually build like real loyalty that way, which I like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we might be a little bit of the culprit of making people switch around a lot, but I think that when people find what they like, they stick to it. Like, I couldn't tell you the last time I used an intra-workout other than Intra-Blast from NutriBio. I have to occasionally for reviews and stuff, but when it comes back to like, most people find a few things that work for them really well. And I joked about this last year, like you have to convince me to not take a couple brands. Like I have just some mainstays in my cabinet that just work so well. You'd have to convince me not to use them. It's not convincing me to use your product. It's convincing me away from other companies. And that has a lot to do with like trust, really. Yeah. Not always just formulas.
Yeah. Yeah, I even see that brand loyalty on our end of the spectrum where it's, people have a loyalty, but they don't really know why. Like, it's just like, oh, they've watched a few videos on YouTube of a certain brand, but they don't really know why they're consuming that product. So what we try to do is try to almost, pull people away from that specific loyalty and get them to bounce around a little bit to try out different stuff and, via, different pathways and see what jives with them. But we do see that loyalty so strong with some people. They're like, oh, you don't carry that brand? All right, well, I'll see y'all later. I'm like, oh, okay. And I mean, I applaud the brand for doing that, for creating that kind of culture. But also it makes things interesting. I'll say that.
So that's honestly a good thing. I know that we're going to get asked about this next too is what do you do when you have a consumer comes in and brand loyal? What if that brand doesn't happen to have that product yet? So do you just not buy that product? You no longer have a need for it. So then there's your door to educate them somewhere else. And that's a good thing, because if somebody has to buy a product for a specific need because that brand that they're loyal to doesn't have it, then that opens a door. Wow, I really like that one. Then it kind of segues in like, okay, what else does this brand have? Well, that's really cool too. And that can open the door. And that's, I know Justin's asking about this and I'm excited, is that you're all familiar, as I believe whoever brought that up specifically, I think Ben, with Revive, that brand does a very good job of coming out with supplements that are kind of more the lifestyle. They feel a need for people not having, whatever it is, the mainstay brand. It's just not as popular. People always look at the macro rather than the micro. They think about pre-workout, think about protein, think about aminos. They're not thinking about long-term health. They're not thinking about performing better as an athlete. So with that being said, it's kind of funny that Revive, launched. I mean, I've had this idea for this Dragon RX series, not so always named this, but the RX series in general, since probably early 2017, actually end of 2016, when I worked as a consultant for somewhere. And I've pitched the idea, it's come up a few times. Oh, that's an awesome idea. For whatever reason, it gets shut down. And then lo and behold, Revive comes out, launches this line, and they're crushing it. So with that being said, I'm excited because it's dropping next week. The first slew of these products in the Dragon RX series is addressing exactly that. It's going after those consumers that may not be a Dragon consumer currently, but then they're going to see this as like, wow, okay, there's not a lot of these products out there. This is something really cool. That gets their interest into something like the Venom for the Mr. Banes, or may get you a consumer you wouldn't get already, even if you don't need the rest of the stuff, but you offer that product. My dad's a great guy. He's, I think, 62, 63 years old this year. He's not a consumer just going to buy Venom. I mean, he'd probably try it if I gave it to him, but I'm not going to do that to the poor guy. He doesn't need 400 milligrams of caffeine, right? However, in that series there, we're launching a prostate, a liver care, a joint support, cardiovascular one. If I'm
the cardio one, yeah, looks cool.
Yeah, the cardio, just a slew of products to help, and immune, and just things like that to help you address your daily functional needs as a human being with cool, novel science. Once again, it fits the Dragon brand, the packaging, the angles, the edge, going about things in a different pathway to a large degree. In a lot of these, once again, that same flavor. But that's going to, it's going to expand our brand to keep those people that are within our brand that love our stuff but had to buy it elsewhere, keep them within the brand. Two, get people that hadn't tried it before into Dragon, interested in Dragon, come across us. It expands that. So that's kind of the segue there is exactly it. Brand loyalty is building these things, and it's cool because we keep adding things. That's a really cool angle. We can capture that consumer. I'm not going after things that aren't really attainable. I'm very realistic here. I'm not going after bang. Okay, that's a freaking oversaturated market. I have no interest in pursuing that. ProSubs tried to do that with Hyde Power Potion. All right, long story short, nope. GAT had interest in doing that too. I'm like, stop trying to go after $1 billion brand. You're trying to go after the number one spot. You're not even the top 50 right now in terms of going after energy drinks. Same thing with the bar market. It's super saturated. Go things are your strengths, build upon things you can actually win. And even if you do enter that space, that's the part that I was talking about at ProSubs Hyde Power Potion. There was a personal vendetta for those of you that aren't aware of the backstory of ProSubs and VPX. You guys know that? Are you aware of it?
I gave you that one.
Okay, so basically there's a huge thing. VPX, Jack hates ProSubs, and ProSubs has no kind feelings toward VPX and Jack. A lot of the former ProSubs staff originated VPX, and they left VPX and started ProSubs essentially. There's a long backstory there, but long story short, Jack didn't take too kindly to that. So then it became personal vendetta. We're taking down Bang. You're going after number one. You need to take over the spots before that. You can't leapfrog everybody with a drink. Point being, and I don't mean to segue away from that, is that we're trying to do is build whatever stuff that's attainable, make cool things, fill needs in the market that are for some reason not addressed. Like for whatever reason, no big brands, even in the bodybuilding space, are doing things for prostate health. Like you have all these guys in performance enhancing drugs. This knuckles out, gloves off episode. Let's be real here. In this industry, a lot of guys, we do stuff in terms of performance enhancing drugs that aren't great for long-term health. Nobody addresses that. Nobody addresses prostate health, long-term cardiovascular health. Nobody takes care of things like your lipid profiles. Nobody takes care of things like a good multi designed for athletes, comprehensively. There's a few multis. But right, how many brands can you name that have a prostate formula then?
So, that's kind of what I wanted to bring this to, especially. It's like, I think that crowd, the people who really need help with their lipids and liver enzymes, normally don't trust dietary supplements. There's like a life cycle of consumers, and normally they get to the point where they're like abusing anabolics. Like they don't take pre-workout anymore. They don't trust people like us to give them good information, which is really unfortunate. And I think it's definitely a bad hand that's been dealt to us. But you're absolutely right. I can think on one hand the amount of people that have made a really good prostate formula.
Yeah, and that's one thing, like going back, it was probably maybe like a year and a half ago or maybe 2 years ago. I remember thinking like people were always asking me about like innovation in the industry. And I'm like, I remember talking about this a lot. I was like, when you look at like Amazon or something, you see these brands just fucking crushing it with these shitty, sort of general health-based formulas. I'm like, where is this in our part of the industry? I was like, there's this missing. So it's not like innovation. It is, but it's like there's this huge, and I remember like I don't give First Form a lot of credit very often, but I thought that was one thing they were kind of ahead of the curve of a lot of people on, is they were making like products that sort of fit each. They didn't have a knock you out pre-workout, so they had these general health formulas. I think a big line of them before a lot of people, and I think it resonated with a lot of people. But now we're seeing I've said this lots of times, it's like, it's really cool to see people with knowledge and resources, because it's been all Amazon and grocery store dominated shit for general health and the general consumer coming in. Now we're seeing people with some actual knowledge and resources and desire to make these cool products in the more general health category. And it's just, that's the one that we've seen blow up over the last like year. And like, I think that that's super cool. So then now you have the Dragon RX one. And then now, because then you have, Dragon Pharma is making, so you already have kind of like a hardcore edge to the brand. So now it's like, that's where you kind of step in too, where you can help educate, this is, what this is for, and sort of bridge that gap. Because some people might be like, whoa, I expect Dragon Pharma to be all about, the hardcore stims and stuff. Like, now you're coming out with these general health-based products, which is a cool idea. But then there's going to be another trick to it, making sure that people feel comfortable, buying from Dragon Pharma these health-based formulas.
Thing is, I'm cool with that. I'm actually interested in going after our target market right now, first establishing that. Because here's the thing, the cool part about Dragon, especially having complete control over what products we make in terms of formulation, idea, pathway, and it's awesome. I have that leash to do this. Certain times, hey, we need a brief. Okay, that's fine. A lot of times I run stuff by and this is what we do, and I'm trusted to make these things. And Ben, you can rate this too, and probably all three of you guys, Mr. Blood Pressure here, is that it's like the color of Justin's shirt. I see this all in the Zoom meeting. In a selfish way, honestly, the idea for this came in a very selfish thing. I'm like, fuck, okay, get blood work back. Okay, my blood pressure is a little bit high, and my lipid profile right now is fucking dog shit. So you look at what's out there. Okay, I need something to help with my blood pressure and my lipid profile. You look at what's out there, like, okay, I like this brand and this brand. This makes sense. Why does nobody in our space have something that's good? And from, once again, knowing what's in it, look at these little brands like you was tested with Amazon and all that. Like, these are dog shit. I could kill these guys. Why is nobody doing this? And that's where the rubber meets the road. We're making let's make a badass lipid product. Let's make a badass cardiovascular support product for blood pressure. Let's make a badass prostate product. So as a product of, being kind of selfish and stuff that, what would I use? But I can all sell people, this is why. So it's kind of cool to have that insight and to be something actively in industry, but also fill a personal need. But then also, hey, it's cool. It's telling a story. It's generally helping people that, may need these things. That's, like you said, getting the people that aren't necessarily in sports nutrition to buy into your brand is a harder sell. You have your Die Hard, and to their credit, they do a good job. Like Life Extension, I'm a big fan. Well, they do some cool stuff. They have a huge product catalog, but it's it's getting that customer to trust it. But, like, why was nobody doing this? And that's kind of honestly how the idea came to light and how it's taken off from, just what would we need as competitive athletes?
Yeah.
So when you said you're launching it next week, what all is the line going to contain next week? Is it going to be full?
So in the initial launch, we're focusing on getting out the Liver RX, which is, of course, liver support, the cardio, immune, stress, which actually is probably the sleeping underdog in this line here. And we're, of course, just launching a generic vitamin C, and we're just going with that one. So I'm excited those initial products there. I feel like I'm missing one off the top of my head, because I think I've developed other ones that aren't going to be released just yet. I'm going to stagger them so I don't, fuck it. The complete line will have stress, cardio, liver, renal, lipid, a mega product, a multivitamin. You have the stress release course. I don't know if I said that one. And just cover a complete comprehensive line. And we're going to add, of course, the other things, like commodity items, like a CLA, so on and so forth, but I'm not as excited about. But honestly, quite frankly, and digestion. That's actually the rock star of the group, that I think the sleeping horse for the angle that I'm taking this. You guys have seen the formulas for some of these ahead of time. It's pretty cool. I'm really excited to launch these. And so a few things I'm working with in terms of timing, sourcing, there's a big ingredient. And the joints is being rebranded as well from the Flex 8 into a Joints RX, which in my opinion will be one of the best joint supplements out there. So it'll be a full stacked line. We're just launching with these first initial ones. And going from there. But I'm really excited about this because, one, I think we do it very well. Two, the packaging turned out beautiful. I can't wait to unveil this. And even the messaging and branding, I didn't know I was a copywriter, but man, like all the launch videos and stuff, I've had some pretty cool videos and voiceovers. So, I mean, a tidbit from that is, before you're a champion, a competitor, a bodybuilder, I am a human. And that's kind of how the video is going to start. Someone wants to steal my tagline, good luck having it done by next week. It's launching Thursday, fuckheads. So that's why I don't mind leaking. I'm just so hyped for this video. You guys, it's going to make your skin crawl, like how cool this launch is going to be.
I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I just say, Drew, you talk really big, like I said in your Dragon Blast video.
Yep.
So I hope it all comes true.
I do. You've seen the formulas, my man. It's not like, hey, I got really cool. You know, it's a big difference, Ben, which I say, you know what, I'm working on something really cool, and then I actually like send it to you versus like, yeah, man, I got this really cool project in the back, man. I got this sick mixtape. Oh, can I hear it? Nah. Versus me and like, Ben, you check this shit out. Like, I think this is gonna be fucking badass. Like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Yeah, I mean, Justin can vouch too. Like, how many people have told you they're doing something and just never?
Yeah, my line is always, people are like, what are your thoughts about this upcoming? I'm like, fucking talk to me when it actually comes out, because I was like, if I had $1 for every time some cool ass product never saw the light of day, I was like, yeah, I wouldn't. So I was like, wake me up when it shows up. But like,
I'll challenge you to right now. What have I shown you guys so far that hasn't been released?
say that again.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I don't mean about you guys, obviously.
No, yeah, not you.
No, I'm saying, like, I talk it, but I back it up because I get excited. Because one, I can't wait to reveal it. You know, sometimes there's delays and things like, but then, hey, man, this is what is coming. We're launching it later in a couple months, but this is what the formula is going to be. It's going to so. I'm just giving you shit for that one, but
this is it's when it comes to like a brand like Dragon Pharma that's established and big, like it's not stuff like that. It's you know, we get hit up by everybody thinks what they're doing in school, but you know, you don't know the pitfalls to the manufacturing process and all these things, which that's what when people like to I don't know, take shots at like bigger brands and stuff like that, but you're like, they're there for a reason a lot of times too. It's like, you know, smaller brands feel this and I don't want to like make broad statements here, but a lot of them just feel this entitlement because they think that because their dosages are a certain thing, it's like, you know, but they can't like hit their deadlines on time and they can't deliver a product and then they can't market it properly. They can't get into people's hands. So it's like, well, you know, then that doesn't mean anything to me then. Like if you can make the coolest product in the world, but if nobody sees it or nobody gets to use it, then who gives a fuck about your formula and that kind of thing. And, but like one thing I did want to talk to you about, the American, you know, the 4th of July, you know, like, dude, I got super excited when I saw that, but now you have that. And now you have the RX line is, I mean, we talk formulas first, right? Of course we want beneficial ingredients, but those packaging, those labels, those are badass.
Thank you, sir. I can't take all the credit for that. The thing how everything starts, it's a tag team effort between myself and our graphic designer, Joseph Rojas. He worked with me at ProCeps. He was one of the OGs there. And I was full-time Dragon, and we're making some really cool things. A lot of times it's kind of funny, like all the icons and things that you'll see on the side of the packaging. Like I like how we do things. Most people listen to this rather than watching, right? So they can't see it. But if you look at the Dragon products, a big part a lot of brands do is they do this left panel. It's nothing but a big block of text. Who actually reads that shit?
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean,
people can see this. People are watching.
Okay, so the cool part, like a very simple one here is like for like our Dr. Fear. As we look at this on the panel here, it's this more, it tells a story. It tells the key points, tells you the important facts about the products, but it doesn't go on and on and on with a bunch of text nothing's going to read. It keeps things very simple to the point. So the funny part about this, the reason I bring this up, like these little icons here, you know, like we have like little, this is actually being reformulated, be dropping probably 2 weeks, is being made right now. This will be being produced today and tomorrow with a new flavor. Is I'm swapping out the coconut water for Aquamin in the Dr. Fear, both from a sustainability standpoint, a flavor standpoint, the benefit one. I'm a big fan of Aquamin. So I gave a small little update. But the point is, like this little coconut here, little molecule, little graph, I actually draw these out, and I'm a decent artist on like a notepad and pencil, but then I send over to Rojas, I'm like, bro, here's what I'm thinking, here's my vision. And the dude just does insane shit. Like for example, like the flag one here, I'm like, bro, here's what I'm thinking, like American flag, but I have no idea what it's gonna look like. He's the one that comes up with makes this happen. He just has that crazy graphic artist eye. And he does this insane things I've never seen anybody else do. Or like, okay, dude, like, hey, here's the icons for like the left panel, you know, like for prostate support, you know, sports mill, prostate health, the bullet points. Here's the icons. I'm thinking the background, the layout, the color. I'm like, bro, you fucking killed this. So I have the raw idea. He's the one that takes the paintbrush and makes the beautiful picture.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
I feel bad for the people that haven't held that 4th of July one in their hands yet, because you see it online and it's like, dude, it just doesn't.
It doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same thing with the RX series. You'll see it. You've seen it, but like even next week, like I think you kind of see in the video, but there's some really cool soft touch built in. It's like a fingerprint pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be sick. I'll send this to you guys next week so you guys can check it out in person. I'm excited about this, man.
I'm sure we'll get a box of the blood pressure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you nothing but cardio.
Yeah. My blood works clean, just so you know.
We need to talk about the redness.
We'll talk about this privately.
You sure your liver? Wait, are you sure your liver works clean after this past week?
After last week, honestly, I don't even know.
I have a problem.
Hey man,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've been doing more Tudka than I should be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually bought
but-
Tudka for that weekend.
But Drew, I honestly I have to say thank you for giving credit to someone else in this whole thing, because I think we've all heard some large consultants in the industry who would like to tell you that they designed everything, they formulated everything, they actually were drawing it themselves, and taking a page out of our book, Drew. They were actually at the actual manufacturer putting the sleeves on the bottles themselves. The entire thing was all of them. They were everywhere doing everything. I appreciate that you can give credit.
Oh, I wanted to give credit to Drew for letting Ben and I, convince you to do so many things with these formulas. First of all, I want because I know you call us up and you're like, "Hey, man, what should I do?"
Tell them that, man. They're gonna come, hey.
I just want to thank you for involving us in the process and letting us convince you to use S7 and everything.
Hey, so that day I don't have to be loud for the F7 anymore. It was all Ben's idea.
Yeah, actually, yeah. When I got to say that in my review that when I tried the American release, I was actually there when the labels were printed out. I was allowed to be a part of the process. Because,
if you look very closely at the label, the flag in the background is not actually a flag. It is a close-up of Ben's beard.
yeah,
Nice.
that's where the amazing texture comes from.
Nice.
Exactly. Under the microscope, his band is red, white, and blue.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe a dumb question about that, but does that stick around for a while? That was just one run for the 4th of July
One run
thing?
for the year, my man. When it's gone, it's gone. I know. Oh, buy it now, limited. But no, that's the whole point. Is we do this really cool label, the American flavor. It is a limited release. That's a good balance. Fine thing. Okay, but then they're like, "Fuck, man." If that's some people love this flavor, I'm like, I kind of need to keep it.
Mhm.
I'll make it wait till next year. But we got something else coming, because that opens the door. This thing, I don't need 13 different flavors of the same products. It's crazy to me too. You discontinue ones that don't sell over time, and we just launched this new version of Venom where it needs to chill for a bit. But this limited edition one, I have a new one they'll be releasing probably before the end of the year. Let it get some legs, but man, the problem is I have so many cool flavor ideas already, and yes, I'm bragging about this. I just fuck, which one do I release next? Because they're all pretty cool, So I'd really be ahead of the game.
Yeah, that one was a home run for sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about was Nuganda, actually. So I've never used Nuganda by itself, and when I tried to find some information what makes it different, we're talking about nootropic wise, but I know a lot of people are huge fans of it. What is it about Nuganda that's different? I get this question a lot, but I've never really been able to find the answer. But I'm sure you know much more about it than I do. I've never used it by itself either.
Okay, and by itself, honestly, this is a mixed bag. I kind of had to get out of Specnova, the ingredient supplier. Wow, inside information. So the ingredient supplier for Nuganda is a company called Specnova. They have some really cool things. They have a MitoHeal. They've tried to put some CBD stuff. I'm like, that's not my thing. But they do a great job of those two specific ingredients. And they also are the ones that have, what's their fenugreek? Alpha-Fen. They have some really cool brands.
Mm-hmm.
So the main difference with the Nuganda is this nootropic version of ashwagandha. In other words, how I've had explained to me from what I've seen on it, it is more limited in terms of data so far, but anecdotally, a lot of this, and people love it, is it has benefits, of course, of cortisol reduction, stress mitigation, there's an adaptogen from the ashwagandha, but it has, in terms of with analytes, of course, may enable to cross the blood-brain barrier easier for the manufacturing process. So, I mean, that's the simplest way that I've had explained to me. I'm like, okay. And I do think that they need to do some more basic and, I guess, intensive studies specifically on that, because it's a great ingredient that I do really, really like. But, that's the part two of point blank. When it first got introduced to me, and oh, it's a nootropic version of ashwagandha. I'm like, okay, and how?
Right.
And
right.
Right. And so how it's basically across the blood-brain barrier easier, has nootropic enhancing effects, and makes it more effective to that pathway. I'm like, okay, let me try some. And I liked it. And everybody I've given it to likes it as well. So I'm like, cool. There's decent data in terms of helping enhance the cognitive focus and control. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, cool. So I do wish there was more data on it. I think there will be, and I know they have a few studies in process, but that's the gist of it though.
Yeah, no, it gets a lot of good feedback. People really like it, and there's just not much to tell. I'm like, well, this is what we kind of know, which is, it is what it is.
A lot of people can obsess over the raw amount with analytes present, but they don't realize there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yep.
Yeah, I said that today. I was like,
oh,
if KSM is 5% with analytes, that leaves 95% left of other stuff.
Other
right?
things, yeah. There's other things aside with analyte content, because in theory, if all that matters with analyte content, I mean, this is actually, I think you covered your story today. So the big part a lot of times when people select which version of ashwagandha to use is kind of what claims you can substantiate with what. But specifically the testosterone boosting claims for the longest time was 600 milligrams of KSM 66. Like, okay, well, in theory, couldn't I use 300 milligrams of Sentinel, which is 10% with analytes? It has two times the analyte content of the 5%, so I need half as much. Well, that may be true. Anecdotally, you may do a test on it, so on and so forth, but there's no research supporting that exact statement. And that's the reason why, in that case, to make that claim, you have to use that data. Same thing with the dickheads over at behind Carnazin. You know, they own all the Carnazin claims. So you have to be very careful in terms of branding if you're not using branded beta-alanine. But dude, fuck you. I'm not paying $30 a kilo for beta-alanine, but you can get it for 10. Like, seriously? What is this, gold? They have this licensing stuff. I'm like, nah, you guys are trying to be kingpins. Nope. There's another area that I won't touch personally, just on a personal level, as well as the headache it is. Anything with nitrates, no thank you. I'm not going that rabbit hole. But I know some people like them, but I just want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Let's keep moving the conversation.
Yeah. Well,
before we all get a letter.
That's all I'm saying. I just want nothing to do with it. I'm sure he's a fantastic gentleman to you guys and would be a very pleasant person with a crisp handshake, but no, fuck that guy. I want nothing to do with him in the lawsuit.
I've never talked to him. I can't imagine I'm on his list.
Well, I do like that Drew has some allegiances with some companies. I think Nutrition 21, I had a really great time with it. Supply side, I'm pretty close to them. They live like right up the road from me. So we get to spend a lot of time with it. And obviously anyone that Sandler's associated with is good. Are there any other companies that you really work with often?
Oh, yeah. In terms of companies, I just, for whatever reason, either A, they have a portfolio of ingredients. Well, I guess that's the main reason. If they have ingredients I really, really like, and man, these are really cool shit, I just tend to use them. I use a lot of things, obviously Nutrition 21, tons of nitrogen, things planned for velocitol. Their Chromax is like the gold standard for chromium. NNB Nutrition has a lot of cool things I like using, like the Caloriburn GP is the one I use a lot. It's in my Venom. It's going to be in, I know upcoming the fat burning version there. Same with the MitoBurn. They have some really cool data. Those are the main thing too. The Glucovantage they have is going to be in my glucose disposal product that's coming out eventually, whenever that is. There's some cool things. I like them. Compound Solutions I use quite a bit. Once again, sometimes you kind of have to, but they have a great team, great support team. Teacrine, Dynamine, their Pico 2 are ingredients I've all used currently or have used in the past. Pico 2 is in the Dr. Fear, Dynamine, and the Venom. Those are some of the biggest ones. Futureceuticals, I use quite a bit of their stuff. They're great for extracts, the infamous S7, but I like them for a lot of the other things, like their Vitacherry Sport's a great ingredient. We have a lot of different things in terms of their really cool things in our upcoming greens product to actually feature quite a bit of futureceuticals. They do a great job of making like the True Serve is what they're called ingredients. Like a certain X amount of grams is equivalent to a full serving of fruit. X amount of grams of this is equivalent to a fruit or vegetables. They have a really cool portfolio. Natreon has a lot of cool things in terms of the nattokinase. They also are the ones, aren't they the ones that have Central? I think off the top of my head. Yeah, so the Central aspect.
What about that brand that we sat with at supply side that was obsessed with the
aminos? The
time-released aminos.
The life of me, I want to say that was the same. Oh, and everyone Specnova, and you met them. That was the same time. I believe that was Ashland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah,
cool,
you're right.
I like Ashland, but here's okay. So this is a funny story from supply.
That's a great story. I think if I don't know, like Jacob or Justin with us, they would have done the same exact thing that we were doing.
And I felt like such a fucking troll, but I'm like, well, you asked me. I don't think once again they knew like who I was or what I did, and they just had this guy with a beard and a camera, like, oh, cool. So we go to this booth. I'm over there meeting with Spencer, great guy. Not good there, fucking Sebastian, not Spencer. I'm sorry if you're watching, bro. Sebastian Balcom. He's the main guy over at Specnova, and we're at the booth. They were hosting at Ashland, I believe was the booth. We sit down and this guy's like, oh, we have this new product that's time release things and all these different concepts. We have time released aminos, time released this. I'm like, wait, what? So he comes up and says, okay, what this is a time released amino product. What we've done, we've gone through a certain process that I don't remember the shit that came out of his mouth. It was like just too long on my bro.
I had video of all of this, by the way.
Yeah, because all I heard was we have time released aminos. And so he said, oh, try this. And I try it. I'm like, it had a weird consistency, but then he's okay. So what this is going to allow the amino acids to release at a slower rate, basically the versus. And I look at him, and I look at Ben, I look back at him like, why? And he had no answers. Oh, because you want like a BCAAs and aminos to have a slower release. I'm like, well, why don't you just take protein. That's the whole point of aminos. Is
Yeah.
or what's the point? Like, why would I want a time-released amino product?
So I was trying to sort of explain to him about like how you need a certain amount of leucine to spike MPS for a certain amount of time, and like long, like extending that wouldn't make any sense. And the guy kept falling back on, I think he had a pharmacy degree or something like that. Like, I was like, you shouldn't be here. Like, you don't, this is very simple nutrition. This is not a big deal, you know?
Like, I'm not asking you how you synthesize this ingredient or the time release process. I'm asking you, why would you do this? It makes no sense to me. So there's been other things I could probably, now of course I'm not gonna be able to name an ingredient, like an example off the top of my head, but they ever like see a product sometimes or an ingredient and you just look at it and you're like, but why?
Yeah.
And this was one of those times like, why would you make this? You know, there's no point.
Well, it's like you skip over the most fundamental question, like the entire reason for creating it, and jump. Yeah. It's like, you know, stepping over, you know, dollars pick up dimes kind of situation.
Or it's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a towel that doesn't absorb water as fast. It's going to stay dry and long.
Just to prove a point.
I'm like, why would I want a towel that doesn't absorb water? Isn't the point to be dry? I don't understand.
Oh,
so anyway, it's just like, okay, I'm just helping the helpless here. But
sometimes I look at some companies, like just their list of SKUs, and I'm like, did you just make it up as you went along? Like there was no forethought to what the end result of all of this was going to be, was there? Like, and I think one of the big things is not enough companies have blinders on. Like, they're like, they start out making one product, then they have a second product, and they're like, oh wait, that company made this cool thing. I want to do something more like that. And they don't stay in their own lane and do their own thing. And I know, like, Drew, like you've kind of every here and there like mentioned other companies and you've kind of gone after them, but like you still have your own unique path for that. I think that's something a lot of people could learn from. Is not, I'm not talking about copycats. I'm talking about people who just constantly change the goalpost for what their company's goal is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a question about an ingredient that you like, Drew, that I think a lot of people are just starting to discover. A lot of people use the N extra version, but the Alpinia Galanga, I think that one's really cool. And you seem to be a big fan of that. How did that one come about, and like how do you sort of tuck that in? And a lot of people ask me about that ingredient.
Okay, well, interestingly, it is actually kind of came to my attention. I'll have to send this to you later. In my time when I was going through like just literally reading, sifting through a lot of research studies in general, I came across this one. It grew it for basically extending the efficacy of caffeine. I'm like, this is kind of cool. Like it's a tea green alternative, and I looked into it more. And as you mentioned, it is Alpinia Galanga root. It's they brand a version called Anextra. And of course, they did a great job marketing and so forth. And I'm like, you know what? This is actually really cool. I like the idea of this. Let's try it out. And so I once again did some testing of it on myself anecdotally, and like, man, you feel really focused on it. The cool part of this ingredient is I use it in my Neuromorph. It's also in my Mr. Vain Stim Free. The first time I used it and one of the first brought to market was actually a year ago in the Dr. Jekyll Stim Free. The cool part is that it doesn't have the stimulatory aspect of it. So the cool part about this ingredient is that it has an ability to extend the efficacy of caffeine when paired with it, as well as, of course, having cognitive enhancement and focus enhancement benefits on its own in data. So it's really cool. So you can use it by itself or with caffeine and make it work even better. And I thought that was really cool. And there is a branded version, like you mentioned, that one, but it's just really cool. Like I just kind of came across a study, and then next thing I know, they're doing a branded version. I'm like, damn, there's some legitimacy behind this. And yeah, so I'm not too worried about using the branded version. The extract level I get from the basic generic version works just as well, in my opinion. So
yeah, and that actually was because you and I actually we were talking about it on the same day, and it was a really important point because you mentioned caloric burn, and you know people had asked me, well, you know, what's the difference between that and say the more generic version or something like that, and especially when you're a formulator. You know, there's going to be a balance there, but it's about the consistency of the ingredient itself and how that plays in. I think that's one part that a lot of consumers miss is, sure, you kind of fall in love with trademarks sometimes, and people are always like, well, our trademark's worth it. And I'm like, well, it's kind of like a case-by-case scenario. You sort of just have to take each one at face value. But the caloric burn, I think, was an interesting one because of where it's coming from and having that consistency all the way through. I think actually is pretty important when it comes to that stuff.
Agreed. So that's exactly touch base on this. We discussed this as well. Sometimes when it comes to choosing between a generic version of ingredient versus a branded one, it depends on a few factors. One of them is like, okay, do I trust the branded version to have the same consistency in terms of the active materials? In this case, I like it. It's consistent, always specs out and tests positively, hitting the paradol content. I like it for that reason. Other things, like for example, we mentioned this earlier when it comes to ingredient difference in terms of generic versus branded, like things like carnosine, like, okay, the generic version works just as well as the branded version. The key is if you want to make certain claims in that case, like for example, this study was done specifically on carnosine branded beta alanine. In order to make those claims, they own the claims. You have to use that branded version. Mm-hmm. So that sometimes it comes down to weighing the benefit versus, the things around it. So sometimes if you want to use an ingredient and be able to make claims about it because it's not as well known, okay, sometimes you may have to bite the bullet. You may have to use the branded version of it. Sometimes it's an ingredient because it's made a certain proprietary process, like nitrogen. You can't just slap those things together. It's arginine, silicate, and inositol bonded together. So you have to use that branded version of it. And also you get the claims versus, like beta alanine, for example, I keep going back to this. I don't personally feel at this point in time, it's worth it to me to use the branded version of beta alanine. I can talk about other things in there, kind of go around, the formula show to help improve training endurance. People get that. And it's nice because by this point, people know enough about beta alanine. They don't care if it's carnosine or not. So that's kind of the trade-off there. Do I need to have the claims to tell the story, or is it something self-explanatory? Do I need to have a branded super duper version of caffeine? No. Yeah. So that's kind of how I evaluate going about that and picking and choosing.
Yeah, a lot of people miss what trademarks do for ingredients. Ingredients Paradise, for instance, you get a couple different extracts across the industry. You get stuff that doesn't contain the other three constituents at all. Yep. You can completely miss out on those benefits. But something like beta alanine, which is like a specific compound that if you synthesize it, it's always beta alanine. There's very little concern about the purity or the quality of that. Yep. The guys who make alpha size are very concerned about generics out there because in China they claim that there are manufacturers making some that are full of carcinogens and stuff like that. But you don't necessarily have that issue with beta alanine. It's actually completely possible to get it from the same exact place that manufactures carnosine. And you honestly could get higher purity beta alanine than carnosine. One of the examples that I always give is a lot of people ask about Creapure. For some god-awful reason, bodybuilding.com's forums back in the day made Creapure into like some god form of creatine monohydrate. And it's not the purest creatine monohydrate on the market. And I'm not saying it's like 70%. There is 70% creatine out there. Creapure is something like 96 to 97%, and you can very readily get 98, 99%. There's no real problem with that difference, but people don't really understand the differences between some trademark ingredients and others, and some just straight up compounds that you can just have synthesized. That was a little bit of a rant. Sorry.
Well, and kind of all playing into the whole, Drew working for Dragon Pharma. So Dragon Pharma is going to say, hey, we have X amount of money to spend on this formula.
Yes.
Please spend wisely, kind of thing. So that's when you're, playing that little bit of a shell game. Well, what's the risk and reward almost from every ingredient that you're going to use? And even things like what you're saying, do people understand regular beta alanine enough where I don't need to bother with it? And then maybe I can tuck that cost into another ingredient, maybe go above and beyond. And that's the thing that I think, Ben, you and I constantly just have with people. It's like, and brands are just different. So just, chill out, everybody. Why would we want everything to be exactly the same? That sounds like the most boring shit ever. Because we're starting to see a little bit of it anyway. And it's like, it is so boring. So it's cool to just be able to pick and choose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's I think one of the most exciting parts of recent, for the last year of my career, is getting so much more into the supply side of it. Pardon the pun. Drew was a huge help while I was there, but making some connections and starting to spend more time learning about the ingredients background has been really helpful for me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get all that information out to normal consumers, but it's definitely been a focus of mine. I know it needs to be out there. Because people a lot of the time ask what's the difference between Chlorobird and other grains paradises, and it's not an easy question to answer, and that's it. I think that my biggest part of my job is just dumbing stuff down for people to understand, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Mm-hmm. I actually, so switching gears a little bit, I have a question that I've been wanting to ask Drew, because I see so many vanilla gorillas, but I feel like you were probably the original one. Where did the nickname come from, and like how long does this go back?
Obviously, I think it probably started like more
It's a
so.
cool nickname, man. It's cool.
I know, I love it and I own it. It's kind of funny. Yeah, obviously, when I wrestled in high school as a 189, my nickname for the longest time ever was Petey. My last name is Peter. So for the longest time, that's what kind of stuck. And it was more so like, man, because of how I wrestled, I'd always start matches like a wind up little fucking monkey, like moving all over the place. And by the time you're 189, if you run out of steam, it's like, all right. Like, oh, you wrestle like a pissed off gorilla. And I heard that a few times. It's kind of funny because then flash forward 3 years, I think like 2013, 2014, when I started focusing more on bodybuilding. And, even then how I trained, like it was like at Lifetime Fitness of all places, Omaha, Nebraska. My friend was on the treadmill next to this older guy and his wife. And I was over there, I was doing deadlifts back, my deadlifting days. And Ben would be proud. And I lift like a power lifter as a bodybuilder. And the guy was like, God, the guy lifts like a pissed off fucking gorilla. And so he starts laughing around. So I was like, okay, Vanilla Gorilla. So like texting me. I'm like, okay. For whatever reason, that's kind of like sparked it and it stuck. She started calling me that. And a few other people at gym started calling me that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't hate this nickname. So I think I'm going to own this.
It works, man. It works. I like it.
Oh, imagine that, Ben. Someone gave him the nickname like you're supposed to. You're not supposed to give yourself fucking nicknames.
You're not supposed to give yourself nicknames.
I've seen a few people giving themselves nicknames. I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad that fucking died. Well, I guess it still hasn't because I still see it. It's like, believe it or not. So I'll even use the voice, the rap to, make it even better. Did you know that if you have an Instagram account and you work out, you don't have to have the name Fit in your name? So from now on, it's going to be Supplement Snoop Fit, Ben Kane Fit.
There you go.
That's your name. I saw people for the longest time. I'm glad this shit died. Just people started like nicknaming themselves like what the fuck? It was like Becky the Delt Denton or something like that. But he called himself Delt. Like,
yeah.
Like Becky Delt. So I call yourself like, I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna call my name like Drew Ass Cheek Peters because I have an amazing like, fuck, where'd this come from?
I'm so glad that like all of Daniel Bailey's phrases died too, like pumpkin delts. I was so sick of hearing about pumpkin delts all the time. Like
pumpkin delts.
Did that clothing brand die? You don't hear much about them anymore.
You hear a lot about Run Everything.
Yeah, Run Everything.
I don't hear a lot about that either. I guess I'm okay.
I think there's different communities, and I
definitely.
I
don't own a Jeep nor live in the wilderness chopping wood for fun and working out by running up a mountain. So I guess I'm not their demographic anymore.
It's funny how that worked. Went from being 350 pounds of muscle to being a vegan that runs the mountains. He's more of a Yeti than I am these days. So
I have to say, I am kind of sad that the Self-Made Barbell Brigade page that Buckeye had there kind of died a bit after that New Year's transformation thing. Bro, I need to like print out and frame some of the shit that I would say to Ben on this.
Oh,
I kid you not. Like they were like, people would legit like message me, like screenshot, bro, it's the funniest shit I've ever read in my life. And I'm like, really? That's it? But for whatever reason, I always come up with good shit about Ben. Like there's this picture of him. It's iconic. Check his Facebook, everybody. Find Ben Kane on Facebook. He's on his phone. And I'm like, I was like, like Ben searching for where Ryan hid the pot of gold because I always call Ryan the icon and him the Yeti. So everything insert Yeti joke or like, oh, Ryan's looking for a step stool. Or I'm like, hey, Ben, that tank top's the color of your face and your blood pressure or something like that. Or like, or it's like, you know what? It's not a good
take it. Just gotta take it.
So I'll own giving Ben the nickname Yeti if he likes it.
Yeah, if it ever gets there. It's always funny for me because like Vanilla Gorilla is also the nickname for Blaine Sumner, who's like one of the strongest bench pressers of all time. So it's like both of these guys definitely deserve to be called the Vanilla Gorilla. I have to give it to Drew though because he's my boy.
All right.
So what's past the RX line? What's next for Dragon? Do you have I mean, it's kind of a loaded question because I know what's next, but what are you willing to talk about?
Honestly, I mean, it's the thing is, oh, what's your secret wraps? I mean, honestly, everybody's same thing. High on this earth, everybody kind of makes the same shit. So it's our turn. I want to make it a better product than that person. So things on the docket right now. I'm reintroducing our isoform protein. This is going to get a new look. It's getting a different co-man for that one. I'm really excited about this. Getting a new updated flavor system. It's something more polished. I'm really excited. The same thing with the panel is getting complete redone. We're also going to add the line a whey blend, a whey protein concentrate isolate blend for people that don't want a straight up hydrolyzed protein. I'm also planning on releasing a very cool and give zero fucks about this. Justin, I talked about this earlier today. I'm not making a mass scanner. I'm making more of a high quality, more masking size meal replacement type shake from Whole Foods. And in this case, it won't be a bunch of bullshit beef collagen stuffed in a container with shitty flavor systems. So, hey, it's true. I'm not using any inferior protein. It's going to be using a badass blend of tri-source, whey protein isolate, micellar casein, egg white, just because I want the mix in there, high biological value, and it tastes awesome. Carb source is going to be from no maltodextrin whatsoever, no bullshit added sugars, oats, sweet potato, just because I like that. The fat sources get a little bit of fun here. Use a combination of avocado, coconut, and MCT. And the flavor system will be done by yours truly. Looking basically 3-to-2 ratio. Hopefully my math is right in my head. It's been a long day. 60 grams carbs, 40 grams protein, about 8 grams of fat per serving. Right in the wheelhouse. And if you want to take a half serving, you're still getting 20 grams of protein and 30 grams of carbs. So for the ladies out there who don't want quite as much, or if you don't need as much of a meal, that'll be kind of the point. So I'm really excited about this one. I've had this ready for like 3 months now, and we're just like waiting because, as you guys know, for a consumer, protein's really fucking expensive to make because it's a big PO. So right now, priority has been cash flow, things like the RX series, more momentum behind our pre, so on and so forth. Outside of proteins, I had a protein ready for a previous brand, never saw light of day. Now apparently they're doing it for vegan protein, good for you. So I would like to do a sports nutrition-centric vegan protein to make it the best tasting one out there. I know I'm setting the bar very high by saying that, but that's a later date.
Are you going to do sucralose with that? What's your parameters for what is allowed to be in a vegan protein?
Okay, so that's actually something that just blows my mind. I'm going to use sucralose and ACE-K because what part of sucralose and ACE-K isn't vegan? It's not from animals. So
yeah, but I think if you look at like natural people who are looking to be as
I know, I get that. At the same time, this case, I've said this before. I don't really care. Because the thing is, if somebody's coming to Dragon, they're probably not going to want to buy the rest of the stuff in my product line. They're not going to want to buy something with 4 milligrams of caffeine. I'm not going after a Whole Foods consumer. The person I'm going after here is an athlete that's either vegan or plant-based, or somebody that simply wants an alternative to taking dairy-based protein. They don't tolerate it well. That's my angle. It's going to have a cool source of protein with three sources. One of them I don't believe anybody else is using, so that's pretty exciting. I'm claiming that now. So we'll see if that is true by the time it comes out. And also a couple kickers in there for other making it more sports nutrition specific in terms of recovery benefits, maybe increasing protein synthesis, as I may give a wink to Ben. He probably knows what I'm mentioning. So I
already hinted that earlier.
Yeah, I think that could be a very
cool an hour ago.
So I do.
No one else is doing that. That's one thing I can tell you. No one else is doing.
See,
Drew, you're very liberal with your no one else is doing these things, but that one I will give to you.
The thing is, I truly, if honestly, sometimes when I say no one else is doing this, that's to my knowledge. So if you do know somebody is, I encourage you to tell me. Yeah, fuck that. Or I'm not worried about that because I do generally like to know.
For the most part, no one's doing the exact formula that you're doing. So for the most part, you're usually right.
Yep.
But that's one move that I've wanted to make for a while that I appreciate. Doubling back, as you said something for the Whole Foods meal replacement, is there any way we can convince you to make that like disclosed, like NutriBrow style, or can we know a little bit more about the percentages of the different sources in there?
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to do that anyway. I was thinking about it, and I actually may or may not already have the label ready.
Okay.
It has it on there because I don't have any problem hiding it. It's legit protein sources. It's like 3 high quality ones, some micellar casein, whey isolate, and the egg white. In terms of the carb ratio, if people want to know, they can, but I'm not necessarily too worried about that. But the other kicker too, there's going to be, I think, I'll hold on to that one. There's going to be some cool things in terms of micronutrients and phytonutrients I'm adding to it for a health benefit, which is kind of cool. This is one little extra kicker. But in terms of the disclosure for it, it's going to be pretty much broken down. I mean, we'll see at the end of the day if we decide to or not. If I said, it has X amount of grams of sweet potato powder and X amount of grams of oats, do people give a shit? I think they're more worried about the protein.
I think it's more just to know, like, hey, this is the percent coming from this protein, this percent coming from that protein.
I could say if just from talking to consumers and stuff like that, because I remember there was a question about, I think it was Granite's protein.
Yeah, I got that a lot.
And maybe Homemade's another good version of it. It's like people ask and they're like, okay, we'll tell you what the percentage breakdown is, and it's like some lower percentages or some things, but people like don't care. They just are curious what it is. They're like, I get it. Like, I mean, there's a reason too why those percentages are like that. Sometimes if you add too much of one, it fucks everything up, kind of thing too, where I haven't seen any, which I've been surprised because I was kind of like, man, people don't start saying stupid shit about this, but people really haven't. They're like, oh, okay, cool, we just want to know because they don't want to run into Well, at least the people that follow me don't want to run into another problem that
My point there, I think in the case of something like what I'm making, where it's like whey protein isolate, isolate casein, and egg, I don't think it's as big of a deal. I think people weren't interested if you have like a whey protein blend with whey protein isolate, concentrate, and hydrolyzate. Okay, do you have like say 25 grams of protein, 24 of it being, 23 of it being concentrate, 1 gram of isolate, and like a 50 milligrams of hydroxylate, then you're just label dressing. So I think in the case like that, where you have cheaper and more expensive proteins, people may care a little bit more. And then you guys know how I feel about whey protein concentrate. It's perfectly fine. It's close to whole food, has some different benefits, pros and cons. But I think in this case, it's not as big of a deal. People are just curious. But I think that's the fine line where people approach that.
Do we want to talk about that story, Drew, that I told you earlier today about the brand owner we love trashing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have no problem with it.
So we had I think I told all you guys this point. Yeah. So I had someone say to me, they're like, hey, they reached out to me yesterday and they're like, so I got this brand owner that's trashing Core's protein because it's not an isolate. And they're like, I know you've talked about this a lot. Can you sort of like walk me through like your thought process? And so I gave them the spiel again about exactly like what you're saying. They're like, hey man, is there a huge difference when you're getting a high quality one? Yada, yada, yada. And then I was like, so who is the brand owner? Just out of curiosity. And they're like, oh, it's Jim. And I was like, motherfucker. I was like, I told Drew that today. I told you guys that today. I'm like, I just don't know where this stuff comes from. I don't understand it. It's just
that's awkward because he started out with the whole beef that I was involved with him was about protein blends.
Right.
Like, not even isolate. I don't even know if there was isolate.
I'm the only person to disclose protein and ingredients on the label.
You ever heard of NutriBio? They've been around since 1996.
Yeah, he's also the only person to ever scream at me in a small gift shop in Ohio about protein blends.
So now, Ben, I have many questions. How many small gift shops in Ohio have you been in?
It's one of those things where like there's this man that's tattooed from his forehead to his toenails, screaming at you while holding a pink shirt that says "I Heart Ohio," and
why have I never heard this?
Yeah, this is
the first time I'm hearing this story.
All right, so this is a 100% true story, and I don't have a NDA with NutriBio, so this is a great story. This is probably going to close out the night, but we were at the GNC conference called the Meeting in the Woods. They put it like 3 hours in the woods of Ohio. You have to land in Columbus and drive like 3 hours into the middle of nowhere. Like it's so far in the middle of nowhere that some nights it's like a reservation with like log cabins. Some of the managers get lost in the woods looking for their cabin at night. Like it's crazy. It's insane. And everyone gets drunk every night. It's like
this is a great story already.
It's insane.
It's so far in the woods, Ben feels at home.
Yeah. And so
sorry. Continue, sir.
So we land and we drive the 3 hours into the woods and we're walking through this, whatever you want to call it, lodge. And it's me, Dan Margolis, and Mark. And we're walking past this like gift shop. It's like all glass. And we're like, let's do Sapani. And this is like literally like 2 weeks post YouTube fiasco. Like this is like the tensions are like super high. Wow. And he just got into GNC and we don't even know if GNC wants us to be there because we just like mopped the floor with him on YouTube with the most educational video to ever be produced on YouTube about protein. And we're like, that's Jim Stapati. And Dan and I just keep walking because we're like, there's no way we're stopping for this. We get like 20 feet. We look behind us and Mark is gone. Like Mark, like we're like, we're doing this. So we like run into the gift shop and all I hear is just like this like heated argument yelling at each other about the macros of each other's proteins. And Mark's like, you've got saturated fat in your protein. And Jim Spiney's like, yeah, well, you're old. You could use it for testosterone boosting. And it's like, it was like a stacked 3D comment section in real life. You know, like it was heated.
I cannot believe this is the first time that I'm hearing the story.
Yeah. So like they're like screaming at each other and Dan and I are standing behind Mark. We look like goons. Like we're like, let's do this. Like, let's go. And so finally we're like, you know what, we're gonna fuck this. We're gonna go. And as we're like leaving the gift shop, this is the kicker. Jim Spiney screams across this entire gift shop, I'm the only person in this whole lodge with a PhD. And it's like, did you just say that?
Oh
like,
my God.
So now you guys know where the PhD thing comes from.
That's where the PhD thing started.
Okay. Well, he's always touted that. Like I remember his videos and he's like, I'm a PhD in exercise physiology. I'm like, okay. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's my undergrad. It's nothing special. Has
Have
nothing
you-
to do with supplements. Like
You guys have seen his
The
BCA
thing
study,
is,
right?
I think it's the same person that actually was probably trash talking that brand. I'm not my pointing, so if I can zoom, point over to left to Justin here. Anyway,
okay,
it's kind of
yeah,
fun. It's intriguing. Put this guy over here. The thing about trash talking the core protein, I'm pretty sure got into it with me on either supplement barbell grade or something like that. But one of this guy and another one, this fitness informant, yeah, talking about different pre-workouts and so forth, whatever. And basically, he's like, "Oh yeah, well, we're the only person that formulates is the only person with a PhD in the industry." And I'm like, "You're right. I'm just a fucking peasant with a master's degree in exercise science, exercise physiology. And so what do I know?" And bro's like, "Do you like commented or anything? Do you know who Drew is?" And the guy's like, "No, I don't give a fuck. He doesn't have a PhD." I'm like, "That's all I need to know. Have a nice day. Carry on."
Yeah.
if
Wow.
nobody but PhDs were allowed to have any hand in this, there would never be any good formulas in the world. I guarantee you that.
How much time do we got left?
Running out.
Okay, I'm gonna end with one quick note here. One thing I've noticed, and this interesting in this industry, because it goes to the PhD thing, is it's just like a lot of times it doesn't really matter necessarily in terms of, oh, you're not a chemistry major, you don't know like, okay, I get how that plays a part, but it's interesting because when I was leaving GAT, the big request there they had is, "Hey, I'm moving, so forth, I'm moving on. Could you find somebody to replace you?" I'm like, "Sure." And my buddy Max Fairchild got him set up, and he's doing big things there. But the point is before that, I am mind blown because people think they always assume you have like a PhD in chemistry or something as a master formulator. I'm like, no, exercise science. A lot of this is self-taught, and this is having a brain and knowing how to read research studies and formulate. It's learning. You don't get called for it. It blows my mind that a lot of the people out there that claim to be formulators or work in like these labs, like at the Comans or for behind the scene things or formulations, like they have these incredible resumes of all this education, but they don't know dick about sports nutrition or formulating supplements. It'd be funny because here's my test is, okay, I got these like 4 resumes. Why am I interviewing these people along with HR here? Apparently that's my fucking job now. But I'm in there and like, okay, wow, they have a PhD in chemistry, biochemistry, and they work at this contract manufacturer for making vitamins. I'm like, oh, this will be a great phone interview. Because the thing is, for sports nutrition, you want somebody that knows the space, somebody that knows about new, novel, innovative ingredients, so on and so forth. So here's the test that I always have for them. Anyway, tell me a little about yourself. Oh yeah, I do this, and I have a master's degree, and I have a PhD, and I worked here for like the vitamins formulation and solid dose formulations and liquids. I'm like, okay, cool. So here's my test for you. Just riddle me this. If you were to come here and make me a pre-workout, I want a novel pre-workout, 20 servings, high-end pre-workout to compete with these 3 products. Like, okay, what kind of ingredients come to mind? What excites you? What would you say is innovative? What would you go after here? And they come with some bullshit like this. Well, I really think there's some really cool things we could do, some B vitamins and maybe a little bit of caffeine. I've done some really research studies on green tea extracts. I'm like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's paralysis by analysis. We see that in every, center of higher education. I mean, not every, but, in a lot of instances where there's almost too much information given without practicality.
It is. It's like you're reading things for the different fucking coenzymes and metabolism in the body. I'm like, what? In theory, sure. Right. But the people in this space, they're not going to buy a pre-workout with a fuckload of vitamins and a bunch of shit that looks like a multi. They want things that are specific to our space for enhancing sports performance. You can add that in, but you clearly are tone deaf to what's going on in the industry. It's interesting because that's why, like I think Ben points out, Justin, there's not a lot of people like myself in terms of like this style of formulating. There's myself, Max Fairchild, he used to be at Nootropics and now at GAT. We're kind of like that style where we specialize in sports nutrition. That's our niche. If you had me go like formulate stuff for like the vitamin category, that's not my specialty. I know enough about it, but then again, I wouldn't be as prominent there, if that makes sense. So it's funny, like there's no translation a lot of times. People take these amazing degrees, whatever, and they don't know dick about the industry. I've noticed that,
right. I also think that people like yourself, Max is really good at it. Justin and I do it too. Like having connections to the people who are actually manufacturing the ingredients is very important. Without that connection, we'd probably still be taking B vitamins pre-workout. Without the outside sales teams that these companies don't really have anymore. Nutrition 21 still has a bit of a team, but there's not a lot of outside sales teams for a lot of these ingredient companies. An extra wouldn't be known if it weren't for people like Drew breaking it, or like these people who work with ingredient companies and bring it to market. So I can understand why some of those people from that side of the market come to this side and they don't know what they're doing because they don't have the right connections to put the things together.
Exactly it, man.
Well
And
said.
this is rubber meets the road, connecting the dots, however you want to put that. But I agree.
Yeah. Well, I think Compound Solutions has done a really good job using people like Justin. I've done some work with them too to make teacrine and dynamine as much as like a household name as you really possibly could. Vaso 6 is on its way. They do a really good job. Like Carnicin, they were the ones that really pushed the horse on that one. They make their ingredients well known by people who don't know ingredients. You know, I get asked by people in the gym about teacrine and dynamine that don't know what muscle protein synthesis is.
Yep.
So
That's 100% it.
all right. Well, that was a really packed 2
yeah.
hours. That was good.
Oh yeah.
I knew there was going to be a lot to talk about with Drew.
Mhm.
Drew, can you plug your social media for us and let everyone know where they can find you?
Of course. So my IG is pretty simple, super easy to find. The original Vanilla Gorilla. It's Vanilla Gorilla Drew. Simple as that. No spaces, no underscores, no dumb letters or whatever, lembers, whatever to mix it up. Pretty easy to find there. If you can't find me, trust me, check out Price Plow's channel, the Nutrition Store, or Supplement Snoop. I'm always doing collaborations, tagging stuff with them. We'll always go back and forth, give each other shit, and reposting. So I'm pretty visible. But yeah, check it out. If you have questions anytime, I'm always happy to help people out. Slide me DMs. If you have questions on products, ingredients, you just want to hear my Jim's Pie impersonation.
I loved it. I loved it, man. That was a highlight for me.
I mean, are we still live?
Yeah.
Like we are?
Oh,
yeah. Once again, nothing but friendship here. You know, cool. Like I have nothing to do with it, and I'm not gonna say specifically a brand, but you guys know who I'm talking about. This other one I have, this is a rock star impersonation, and you got to hear it. So it cracks me up because there are certain companies that'll do like these telemarketing calls. Basically, it'll just ring for a second, hang up, and it leaves you a voicemail. And I think Justin about pissed his pants earlier today when I sent him this. So he knows it's coming. So Redcon one, Aaron, he's very active in terms of their marketing. He does a great job with that. Kudos to them. They're up the road from us. That's our main competitors. But he has a very distinct voice. And he kind of is like, hey, what's going on? Aaron Singham here. I just want to talk about this great deal. If you buy $300 worth of more, Benjamin Kane will come to your house and give you a free hand job and a hoodie. And so he has this marketing stuff. And welcome. Once again, nothing but love, but like, bro, his voice is very distinct, and I love his calls. So that's
amazing.
Yeah, I love to hate those ones. I hate the calls. I hate the text messages, but they've got to work because he does them himself.
It does. I mean, fuck, man. I just need to get a distinct voice, and people start mimicking me. Maybe that's good that I have the gift of him making other people. You know,
Yeah.
Hey. Then look like you have a fucking stroke. Look at PJ Braun, that douchebag. Hey, what's going on, guys? Blackstone, PJ Braun. Man, fuck that asshole. He wants to start some shit. I'm gonna end some shit.
All right. Well, I think I got to cut it there. So thank you so much, Drew.
Thank you, buddy.